them as well. What a move from the 48. Oh, look at this, and onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
After the excitement and intrigue of the opening 2 rounds of the World GT Championship at Imola last week, we head on over across the Atlantic Ocean to Sao Paulo in Brazil for round number 3 of the championship, and it is an endurance round, an hour and 45 minutes of action for myself, Paul Smith, and joining me this week is Chaz Draker, back on the World GT Championship. And Chaz, what are you feeling going into an endurance round at Interlagos?
Thank you very much, Paul. It's very exciting always coming to Interlagos. It's a circuit that really separates the top drivers in a championship to the drivers that can't quite get the feel of the machinery underneath them. There's a lot of different sort of elements to this circuit. You've got high-speed sections with heavy braking zones, but you've also got some long, flowing, high-speed corners as well, where drivers really need to keep the tail end of these GT cars in check. But it's interesting to see an endurance race here, because I think in the past, every time the championship has visited Interlagos, it's been either a sprint or a feature race, and it's usually brought out quite a lot of incidents. So I'm intrigued to see if there's a bit of a difference in the driver's sort of mental state going into this one.
As I said last week, it was 2 feature rounds to start off the championship. Now we're here at Interlagos for an endurance, the first one of the season. Next week we head off to Circuit de Villeneuve for 2 more feature races. Mugello then, after that, is going to be the first of our 2 special rounds. We'll talk about those when we get to them. Road Atlanta, Barber, Nürburgring, Mount Panorama, Monza, Belle Isle, Watkins Glen and Sebring will see us out to the end of April. And well, it is a championship, so why don't we have a look after 2 races of the season so far. Ross McFarlane leads the championship by 6 points over Anders Meyer. And then it's James Bume, the defending champion, just a further 10 points back from him, ahead of another former champion in Leandro Anderuti. Adam Tompkins, Axel Sliptrovic, Jack Sedgwick, Arthur Thurtle, Michael Avdokas and James Ibram rounds out your top 10. That's in Pro. In Pro-Am, it's Adam Watson who currently leads that one by 11 points over overall race winner Michael Gray in the second race of the season. Mark Hutchinson ahead of Jamie Rushworth, with Jack Osborne, Ben Palmer, Till Sommerfeld, Simon Lersing, Ben Cullen and Phil Samways. Then your AM Championship is headed by Jesse Payne Wilkins, who's only just 4 points clear of Andrea Corbellini, with Giuseppe Moschella just equal points in third place after a strong second race. Johnny Elliott then for the 11/10 racing team is in fourth ahead of Simon Andre Livingston, then Kevin Stringer, Craig Jones, Dan Blackwell, Ed May and Brian Balterson rounds out the 10 in AM. Your team's championships in Pro, Altitude Esports are 1 and 2 at the moment by a point separated between the blue and the esports team. WSR Esports Buttkicker lead their WSR Esports team by just 9 points separating those two. German Sim Racing Pro ahead of Boots and VDS by Undercut, Racing Lab Esports, Effect Simulations and Olympus Esports rounds out the 9 teams. Then in AM, it's the German Sim Racing AM team that currently leads that championship ahead of Atomic Esports, with Full Tilt, V Mud Sport and V Sim Sport 3rd and 4th place respectively. ADX Racing Team ahead of SCCR Sim Sports, 3M UK, Novia Racing Team 11/10 and Mystic M Sport round out the 10 in AM. So that's how things stand at the moment in the championship here. But after 2 45-minute races in the feature round last week, we come to an endurance round, and it's a little bit of a different mentality that you take into this type of racing, isn't it, Chaz?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, even with the feature races compared to the previous sprint race format that we used to see in the World GT Championship, drivers have to sort of tone it down a little bit. There's a lot longer in the race to get moves done. People are a lot more patient, and it usually brings out more exciting racing in the long run because battles last for longer. You know, the drivers will sit behind one another for even longer, and they won't go completely sending it on each other straight away because they know they can sit there, get in the slipstream, maybe even save a bit of fuel, play it towards the strategies, and then, of course, they can bide their time and figure out where their opponents are making mistakes, where they've got a little bit of an advantage over them. There's so much to think about in these games. They're actually a bit more of a mentally demanding situation than your sprint races, where it's just full-blown attack everywhere. But we have Jack Sedgwick currently fastest in the number 10 Ferrari. Just this all-black entrant. Looks like a sort of privateer entrant for this season, doesn't it, from Jack?
Yeah, it's not got an Inex paint for this season. Either that or they've not found enough paint at the spray booth so far this season. Ross McFarlane, 3rd place in his Lamborghini, back in the Lamborghini this season for the WSR Esports butt kicker driver. Leandro Anderuti in his BMW, well, he won the opening race of the season. He's in 2nd place on the grid right now, as he just put in a time 62 thousandths of a second off of Jack Sedgwick. James Bume, reigning champion, didn't have the best qualifying last week. He's certainly holding himself well in 3rd place right now. But you look at the closeness of the times out there. I mean, we're talking 1 second covering 1st to 28th.
Absolutely amazing, isn't it? It's only the sort of gap that you'd see at Silverstone National in the British Touring Car Championship, but this is with GT3 cars of all different shapes and sizes, let's not forget as well. and we've got 3 different manufacturers in the top 4. We've got 2 Ferraris up there, the BMW M4 of Anderuti, and then Ross McFarlane, previous champions, Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, 3 of them in a row at the moment. And this is Ross, of course, screaming away that 5.2 litre V10. Sounds absolutely incredible as he brings the session to a close. He remains in 4th place, but James Buemi, reigning champion, certainly right up there in the thick of it now as Davidson moves up into 4th place ahead of McFarlane. But it's all very, very close indeed, Paul. I'm intrigued to see how this race pans out with that being the closeness of the times.
I think this is Anderuti heading onto pit road here potentially. No, he's going to stay out. And does he cross the beam and improve his time? Yes, he does. And he's going to put himself on pole position for 2 weeks in a row. Sensational time in the end here. My goodness, he's gone and stuck that BMW right at the head of the field. Here comes Adam Tompkins to finish off the session for German Sim Racing Pro. He gets himself up into 16th place, but what a time to do that time right at the death of qualifying.
Absolutely, that's going to crush Jack Sedgwick's resolve a little bit there. Jack is going to have to really get his head back in the game, but still, starting from the front row, it's hardly a destruction of your confidence, is it, as a driver? But yeah, Anderuti really showing that he means business here. Like you say, 2nd week in a row that he's done that now in qualifying, so he definitely wants to make his mark here. And that's the thing, even qualifying can be mind games as well. You know, drivers can sometimes get themselves up in a high position and then go and sit in the pit lane for the entirety of the session if they're happy with the time they've done. Anderuti stayed out there and pushed to the very end to make sure that he got pole position, and he did just that.
Well, yes, certainly, as the time will just tick down momentarily here. Worth noting that actually top AM has got himself into 15th of Dan Blackwell. Top Pro-Am is going to be Adam Watson in 13th, so quite high up for Dan to be, because the next Am from 15th all the way down to 27th for Corbellini. So it's going to be intriguing to see. And those conditions that you see on screen, the drivers will be thankful that the series now is going with whatever date we are running the event on, because this track is notorious for seeing tracks the track temperature being up in the 50s around here. But we are getting ourselves set for the starting grid here in this round number 3 of the World GT Championship. Pleasure to have you all along here with RaceSpotTV, and it is Leandro Anderuti for Team PGZ sticking it on pole position, but alongside him in his Ferrari, his next racing Ferrari, is Jack Sedgwick. James Buemi and Alex Davidson then is in 3rd and 4th places, with Ross McFarlane and Michael Avdoka sharing row number 3. It's the 4th row of the grid for Axel Slijeptrovic and Ethan Critchley. Row 5 for Rafael Schiffer and Anders Meyer. 6th row of the grid for Dennis Grabowski and Arthur Fertel. And then row number 7, Adam Watson, as I said, your top Pro-Am, alongside him, Thomas Caviglia. Row 8 for Dan Blackwell, the top Am in this field in that 3M UK car. Alongside him, Adam Tompkins, with row 9 shared by Daniel Sedgley and Ben Palmer. 10th row of the grid is Mattia Catania with Jamie Rushworth. 11th row of the grid, Johnny Walker and Andy Archer. Row 12 is Paul Webster and Matthew Loveridge, with Till Sommerfeld and Michael Graham, row number 13. Row 14 for Andrea Corbellini with Joe Newman. And then the 15th row of the grid, Jeremy Bossando and Simon Andre Livingston, sharing that row of the grid and testing my ability to pronounce people's names. Jack Osborne and Jesse Payne Wilkins then are on row number 16, with Juha Huttunen and Mark Hutchinson on row 17. The 18th row is Simon Lersing and Byron Crawford in that 11th, 10th racing team. Row number 19 for Colin Campbell and Phil Samways, with row 20, James Ibram and Ben Gregory. Johnny Elia and Kevin Stringer then share row number 21, with Craig Jones and Ben Cullen on row number 22. Giuseppe Moschella, who had a decent showing last time out, back there on row number 23 with Chris Gooch, row 24 for Nathan Healy and Dwayne Hoffman. Final two rows of the grid is Bart Fauerstein and Alan Mystic, with Brian Balterson and Stephen Koenig rounding out your 52 entrants in this race. Chaz, we've got a few moments before we go green flag racing. What are the keys to this race then? What do you think it takes to get a win around here?
First off, surviving the start. There's a lot of key pinch points around the initial lap here, especially in such a big field. The drivers towards the back are going to have to really have their wits about them here. I think as long as everyone keeps it clean at the front, we should be okay, because they're usually the ones that sort of spearhead any potential accidents. We've all seen cars go off the road and bounce back on here. That's the main sort of issue that you find at Interlagos. But I think it's just a case of just keeping your head in the game. You know, it's so easy here to go for opportunities if someone goes offline in front of you. It's a very one-line circuit, so you just need a bit of self-preservation, really. Just take it easy. Don't go for every single opportunity that comes your way, and don't take any risks.
Last week we saw Leandro Andaruti hold the field back to the very last minute before he went away for the green flag. Are we going to see something similar? Well, he's driving right on the boot lid of that Porsche 911 safety car as that pulls into pit road, and we will get ourselves set for the start of this round number 3 of the World GT Championship here on RaceSpotTV. And Andaruti holds, now he goes, and we've got a green flag in the air, and we're underway down towards the centre S for the first time. Andaruti gets a good start. They're going 3-4 wide into the chicane. Can they all manage to get through nice and cleanly? Well, so far so good as they head into Curva de Sol for the first time. 2 spinners further back. Oh, we've got a bit of a stack up further back in the field. Track stays clear though, so we do stay green flag racing, although they're spinning and more contact. You have got yellow flags out there, guys. You've got to listen to them. But the leaders, they're heading through to Interlagos and then heading uphill to Ferradura for the first time here.
It was very nip and tuck between McFarlane and Davidson, the 2 cars we had on screen just then, the 2 Lamborghinis. They were really close to making contact, and there was another driver trying to put their nose down the inside as well. But look at this now, big move down the inside. Anders Meyer involved in this little battle here. Ethan Critchley, I believe, as well in that. And then Michael Evdoka trying to put his nose a bit further forward. Actually, it's Evdoka having a go at Slijepcevic. He's just now having to go from being the attacker to the attacked with a massive BMW M4 behind him. And I wouldn't want to look at that thing in the mirror, to be honest with you. But I tell you what, it's certainly got a menacing stance about it, has that BMW. But not so bad, really. I mean, the incident, it was just one of those pinch points I mentioned earlier on. There's a real bottleneck out of the chicane with cars going this way and that. For the very first corner, they all had it figured out, but then it just seemed when everyone was recovering after that, there was that sort of crossfire that you usually get, and unfortunately another incident curtailed.
Across the line then, Andaruti has a half a second lead of Jack Sedgwick. Reigning champion James Bume in 3rd place. We've got more moves being made between the Altitude Esports trio there. We've got the 2 Ferraris and the Porsche. The Porsche, of course, being Adam Watson. He's the lone wolf of the team there. He's got Thomas Caviglia along with him for a bit of company. And behind them as well, they've got Dan Blackwell, the top am, and Daniel Sedgley side by side into Interlagos. Through they go. Watson loses the place. Sedgley also gaining the place over Dan Blackwell. Uphill once again into Ferradura once again. And this is a tricky corner. You're carrying speed, but it tightens up, and you've got to slow it down then for this tight right-hander. Get it right over that entry curb, that right-hand curb. Then that opens you up, if you're side by side, to people going down the inside of this left-hander.
Yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare, really, to be fair, getting all the way around the right-hander there at Ferradura, because the car is doing so much all at once. You're trying to get it slowed down. It goes through the compression as you first go up the hill, but then as you're still trying to slow down, go down through the gears, you've got a curb and a crest to deal with as well. And in mid-engine to rear-engine cars like these, that is not a recipe that's going to work very well at all. So drivers really have to be switched on up there. There was a nice little bit of opportunism there by Caviglia, who was looking down the inside of Watson. He made that work and has now moved up into 13th position. But as we usually see, there's so much of a train that's very evenly spaced out, isn't there? Oh, there's a little bit of contact almost just up in front there between the Olympus BMW actually and the Porsche that was next to them. Very scary moment down towards turn 1.
That was Watson and Sedgley then, the two of them. Watson in the Altitude Esports Porsche, and he's got Daniel Sedgley. There's a car coming out of pit road, a 3M car, that's Johnny Walker, so he's had to take repairs after the opening lap shenanigans at the Senna S. Also, we've had a number of drivers on pit road. Phil Samways and Colin Campbell, they are back out there on track, but they had to take a tour directly to pit, so they're going to be laps down along with Johnny Walker. Dwayne Hoffman, Michelle and Mark Hutchinson and Till Sommerfeld have all been on pit road, and this is what happened then.
Yeah, just one of those horrible pinch points. You know, one driver makes contact and it becomes a car park, but look at the top of shot. When drivers are trying to recover, there's a spin actually from the Audi, and it just becomes a roadblock completely, and then has contact with its teammate as well. Didn't quite pick up on which of the Audis that was, unfortunately, but it's just one of those things, isn't it, Paul? People putting their nose down the inside, tiny bit of contact here and there. It was the Audi on Ferrari, and then look, trying to avoid it, the Altitude Ferrari that moved left, just innocently trying to avoid an accident. Good stuff by that Audi there, though, to reverse out of the way so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. There was two full tilt cars that got together in the runoff area, the two Audis. So that will be a little bit of a talking from the team boss, I do feel. But back to live pictures then. Leandro Andanuti there at the head of the field, as we've got Raphael Schiffer is involved. He's a spinner in that Porsche, the German sim racing car. She rejoined, nicely and safely rejoined, but further down the field, and I didn't quite catch who the contact was with, unfortunately.
The Porsche went around very, very quickly there. There was a Ferrari behind him, one of the Altitude cars. I think maybe... I'm not going to take a guess, actually. It's my first time back for a while. Oh, actually hit the front. Hit the back of the Lamborghini in front of him there and sort of bounced off the back of it. But obviously tried to avoid the contact, slammed on the brakes, and the rear end has gone around mighty quickly.
I think it's Evdoka. I think it's Michael Evdoka that he's gone to the back of. And we saw this last week, just making contact mid-corner with another car. It unsettles the back end of the car, spins you around, and it's inevitably the car going into the rear that ends up being the worst off. But Raphael Schiffer then is going to have to do a bit of a recovery drive here, but with an hour and 38 minutes and 51 seconds remaining, he's got time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't let your head fall off this early in the race if something like that happens. It's not a 20-minute sprint race anymore. You know, you've got a lot of opportunity to make it work. You know, you can adapt your strategy as well. Some of the best drivers in this series will, you know, have incidents. Nobody's immune from them, or they'll have a slight setback or a hurdle in their race that they didn't expect. But then in their head, they'll be able to calculate the maths and just figure out the strategy from there of how to come back from that. There's a big send by the Ferrari down the inside on the Porsche. That was a lovely late move, but it didn't quite work out there into turn 1. They both recover well, but now I believe is that Ben Gregory that I'm looking at in there in the 113 car? It is, in the rainbow coloured Ferrari, trying to now take advantage of Joe Newman's overzealousness into turn 1. Looks down the inside and doesn't quite do it into the Interlagos that time round. But again, that's the thing here. It's really, really close stuff. Nip and tuck everywhere, Paul. As soon as you go for a move and it doesn't work, you've got to then look in your mirror because you're under attack again. Yeah,
exactly. And if you end up compromising yourself through the Senna S, it leaves you open to that attack. Down through Curva de Sol into the Interlagos. And that's what Ben Gregory tried to do, but Gregory has got company behind him in the recovering Raphael Schiffer. Now, the German sim racing driver will be hoping to move forward and use that little bit of extra speed. Speaking of speed, Ethan Critchley for World Sim Racing, new team, and has moved himself ahead of the driver who's now in 8th place, Anders Meyer. Now that's a change of position for Ethan. He's wanting to try and charge down Axel Slijeptrovic and the rest of them in front because he wants to be up there competing. I think that's part of the thing. With him changing teams, you would imagine that he's got his sights set a bit higher up the field now.
Yeah, absolutely. A team change could give you a lot of confidence. You know, if you've got new people backing you and a new squad of guys around you, then it does give you this sort of inspiration to, you know, get to a different level. And we've seen the guys from WSR and obviously the Pure Sims guys as well, just be so confident and so fast. I mean, look at Ross McFarlane, he's a multiple champion under the WSR banners as well, and to have people like that around you can inspire you to have that extra pace. He's got his 2 Lamborghini teammates just up the road in McFarlane and Davidson, cars 127 and 55, just on the back of this train. But this is a solid train for the lead at the moment, where you've got to think, Paul, Cedric, Bumy, McFarlane, Davidson, they might have a slight opportunity at some of the high speed sectors here to save a bit of fuel.
And this is what we've seen in the past from Ross and from his teammate Alex Davidson. Davidson, by the way, who had a competitive round in the Rafa Racing Club Porsche Esports Carrera Cup Great Britain yesterday. Ended up with a second place in the second race of the day. He's shown some pace, and he showed last season that he can challenge for a championship. It didn't quite pan out for Alex, but he's shown that he has got pace behind him. It's just tying it all together and not to get involved in any silly incidents.
Yeah, absolutely. I've commentated on a series or two that has included Alex Davidson, and not only is he rapid, but he's also a really good laugh as well. He's always involved in the banter on Discord. He's a fantastic guy behind the scenes. Really good sportsman as well, actually. You know, when he's ever involved in incidents, there's always a very neutral discussion about it afterwards, and, you know, he doesn't just go in all toxic and screaming at people. He looks at the mistakes. He holds his hands up if he makes a mistake as well. He's a true gent, is Alex Davidson, and a great guy to race with and just to watch as well, to be honest with you. We look here at Sedgley in the number 229 BMW M4. He's got the current Pro-Am leader Adam Watson behind. I imagine Adam will be quite happy to just sit there at this moment in time, because he's got just 2 places back to Ben Palmer, but a bigger gap than a lot of the cars around him have got in their mirrors.
Yes, although he did lose the place to Daniel Sedgley, so Adam's a feisty character. He will fight a position or two. I mean, we saw him pull off a magnificent overtake around the outside of Tosa. It basically just means that it was a heck of a move to make, and it shows the feistiness of the drivers in Adam Watson. But Daniel Sedgley, we've seen him improve season upon season here in the World GT Championship, and essentially he's showing some good pace in that BMW.
Yeah, absolutely. The BMW is a fantastic all-round car, really, and they always have been. You know, if you look at the likes of the Z4, even the M6 in the real world as well, they're big GT3 cars that BMW specialise in, and they're always great all-rounders. They really come strong in wet weather conditions as well when they're bigger cars, because they can spread the weight more evenly. Here's Mattia Catania, currently making his way through the Senna S's for the first time. Great to see the onboards and see the drivers themselves as well behind the wheel. It's a fantastic element to have for our broadcasts here on RaceSpotTV. It's just inside the top 20 at the moment is Catania. Just checking what his position in class is right now. 5th position in class. That's Andy Archer just in front of him, and then just ahead of him, actually, another Pro-Am driver in the form of Paul Webster. So potential podium, which is in visual range here, Paul. It's a bit of an incentive for you when you've got visual contact with the drivers you're chasing. It's easier to do that than just chase numbers, isn't it?
It's always good to see them also repping the team wear as well when they're on camera as well. Know how to brand themselves. So Mattia doing a good job behind the wheel of his Porsche, and certainly enjoying himself. You can see the focus as well, looking into the corner apexes as he turns around the turns. So Mattia looking forward and looking to maybe gain a couple more places, although with this being a long race, it's a case of being patient, being just able to sit there and being comfortable to do a bit of fuel saving and to help you out, because strategy will come to play, and you've got 2 pit stops in this race. Unlike last week, Chaz, where we had the 1 pit stop, this week 2 pit stops, so you've got a bit more of a play to work on the strategy.
Yeah, there's more phases to the race, isn't there? People have more opportunities to maybe fuel a bit shorter and get themselves in a bit of clear air, or just run the car till it's on fumes and save fuel in the stint before that. There's so much more diversity to what people do with the strategies in a race like this, and that's what makes them exciting. Because, you know, even for the drivers in the race, for us up here in the commentary box and in the broadcast booth, there may be drivers further down the order that are working on strategies that are so under the radar, we won't realise till the end of the race that they've gained 15 places by being in the right place at the right time. But that's the beauty of these things, because the field is so big. Drivers can get away with strategies like that, and usually no news is good news in those scenarios. So I'm looking forward to how this shapes out in the later run, but at the moment it's been an exciting opening stint with this quintet leading the way, staying where they are, but it's a great chase at this moment in time, and that's what these races are about. It's all bigger picture stuff.
We did speak to Leandro Andaruti last week after his race win, and Peter did try and probe him to find out, oh, so you changed 2 tyres, which tyres were they? He wouldn't tell us. So we've got to try and pry that information out of him at some point. But certainly, as we see those conditions heading towards 9 AM in Sim, as there's a move down the inside for one of your altitude esports cars. I think that was Dennis Grabowski making that move on Michael Evdoka. Yes, it was. So Grabowski up into 9th place. Yeah, those conditions a little bit hotter, 2 degrees hotter from race start, which was 32 degrees. We'll be keeping an eye on that because with it being on the 9 AM and with it being clear skies, I mean, another hour and a half, so you're going to be talking 10:30 for the finish of this race. That track could potentially end up in the 40s.
Yeah, absolutely. The temperature can rise really quickly here on the Brazilian circuit of Interlagos, and the humidity as well doesn't help that. It just exaggerates the heat that comes out of this place, and it's not a circuit that's exactly far from abrasive, let's say, either, so it really does kill the tyres. The number 12 machine is facing the wrong way there. That is Jeremy Bonsaudo, the pro driver. Not sure if he had some help there. The car looks a little bit battered and bruised, but that could well be from the incident earlier on in the race. Here's a replay. He's got the car number 11 just a few places ahead. That's Byron Crawford. A full tilt Audi just nips down the inside. He tries to take advantage. Oh, and again, we see hitting the back of the car in front bounces them off. Now, I've only ever really seen that sort of physics in another sim, to be fair, Paul. That's not something I've seen in iRacing very much. Usually it would ping the car in front of you out of the way, but yeah, he really does bounce off the back of that Audi. Oh no, sorry, he hits the Porsche. Yeah, he hits the Porsche. I do apologise.
And that's then unsettled the car, loses control, ends up in the wall, and hopefully then he can get his car fixed. I mean, when do we look at the first sort of pit stop window being a possibility here in this race? You normally talk a short second stop, or some people do actually take a short first stop in this race, as we've got tyre smoke, we've got Byron Crawford around, and I did see other tyre smoke as well around Curva del Sol, and there's a car on the inside there, car number 3, Jamie Rushworth. I saw on my track map was at a standstill. What on earth has happened here? Well, this is down into the centre S. This is Byron Crawford down the inside, defending his place. Has he carried too much speed? Yes, he has. Around goes that car. And Jamie Rushworth is a separate instant in the background of shot there.
Yeah, I think Byron was focusing so much on the car that he was defending from that he just missed his braking point. This is Jamie on the back of Ben Gregory. Oh, he's just been turned by Schiffer. Schiffer looks down the inside into a gap that wasn't there. I mean, you could expect that sort of move in a sprint race, but when you've got an hour and a half left in a race, you don't need to take those risks.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and I wonder if we can get an onboard from Schiffer looking at that again, because the gap does appear to... Rushworth comes away from the curb. So
yeah, it looks like he's running wide.
Yeah. I can see the temptation of going to the inside for Schiffer in the number 31, so... yeah, it's just not there. It's never really there to begin with, that gap.
The way I'd look at it is the gap from the white line away from the rest of the circuit. Jamie's barely off the white line by the time he sort of looks down the inside. It was almost the sort of line that Nick Heidfeld would take if he wants to hit a safety car, that sort of thing. But Jamie Rushworth drops down the order a little bit. Connery's going mad with the replays here, trying to get us what he can. Thank you, Connery. So here is the view from Schiffer. Realistically,
you can see why.
Yeah, absolutely, because it goes from right to left. Absolutely, yeah, I'm with you on that. But at the point they make contact, the fact is that Jamie's car is barely away from the white line in the end. So it was, we can understand why, but it's a shame.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. And I think Schiffer will hold his hand up and say, yep, no, that's my bad, folks. I'll hold my hand up to that one. Back to live pictures then at the front. Denis Grabowski does actually hold the fastest lap of this race in his Altitude Esports car. He's only about 7 seconds off, 7.5, 8 seconds off of your race leader. But this quintet, you're absolutely right, Chaz. It's just been pulling away at the front, and they've been just gapping out over Axel Slijepčević. Now, is that a case of Slijepčević and the rest not having the pace, or is it that Slijepčević is working to his own fuel numbers?
Yeah, I think he doesn't feel the need to push like mad at this stage. He knows what the gap is. He knows that he's not comfortably ahead of the guys behind, but they're not an immediate threat at this moment, as we have a bit of side-by-side action here out of the first couple of corners. That's the number 39 Porsche of Matt Loveridge and Dan Blackwell. Dan's still leading the AM class, so he needs to be careful here not to get involved in too big of a fight to drop him down the order. Again, he's another driver with no immediate threat behind him, but still, all it takes is one tiny bit of contact or misjudgment, and your result will go flying down the order. But still, from the angle of Slijepčević, it's just a case of not pushing it too hard. There's no point, again, I mentioned the risk factor here. He doesn't need to throw the car at anything here and go over the top with it. I think, Cuvier has just had a bit of a moment, to say the least, there, and gone flying down the order.
Was he, did he trip or did he get pushed? We're about to find out. And it's an Adam Watson behind. So now the other car's in front there, checking up that full tilt. It's the full tilt car trying to get out the way. Now, to be fair, they're all the way over to the left-hand side of the track, and Cuvier does come across. Yeah,
Cuvier's just let the car run wide there. I think he expected the overlap to be gone past the Audi, but again, that's one of those moments of misjudgment that I just mentioned earlier on. You know, it's that split-second decision. He runs all the way to the left-hand side of the circuit. He is going a lot quicker than the Audi, but not quickly enough to completely clear it. From that angle, you get an idea of the speed difference, but yeah, it just pings the Porsche off. He's actually quite lucky there, Paul. That wasn't a bigger bit of contact with the wall, wasn't it?
That was Dwayne Hoffman, who was, again, just trying to get out the way. He was being lapped. And in this series, there is a rule, like most of iRacing's official series, if there's a blue flag, it's just an advisory. Well, in this series, if you're being lapped, it's not a case of just jumping out the way of them, but you are expected to facilitate and help the overtake being made. I would argue that Dwayne has done that. It's just that Thomas, as you said, Connor is our producer, that he was expecting that overlap to have been gone.
Yeah, for sure. It was, like I say, misjudgment on the part of Cuvier. He just expected the car to have gone flying past by then, or maybe just wanted him to sort of jump off the road, but like you said, he only has to facilitate it. He doesn't have to completely jump out of the way. Back on board here with Catania in 20th position, Andy Archer just in front. Funnily enough, these cars are numbers 4 and 5, but they're actually positions 4 and 5 the other way around in their class at the moment. Pointless fact for you. Looking at the back of the Lamborghini, anyone that's been racing in a British sim racing community of any sort for a long time would be excused if thinking that was John Roberts in front of them, to be fair. But it definitely isn't. Cuvier is then the Porsche ahead of that. Catania just flexing his hands a little bit there, and over the course of a race like this, Paul, I think people often sort of underestimate how, not just mentally, but physically fatiguing these races can be.
Yeah, you basically, you're doing just short of 2 stints, aren't you? So you're double stinting effectively, as Andrea Corbellini in the ADX Racing team had a good outing after not having the best of first races of the day. Then, with the spin of a die or a spin of a wheel, found themselves on pole position. So Andrea was in quite a bit of a from back to front, because it was a full reverse grid last time out. Not so much luck this week, of course, with it being an endurance round. So it's a case of just having to just be where they are. And 31st right now, looking solid in that AMG Mercedes.
The only Mercedes in the field as well, which makes me very sad because, I mean, I'm sure we'll all remember a time when GT3 cars first came to iRacing. It was a field of Mercedes back in Season 2 of the World GT Championship. It's a massive shame to only see the one of them out there. I think it's a glorious looking car, great sounding machine, and it was always a strong all-rounder, but shows you how the sort of strength of GT3 cars has come forward recently, that your Ferraris, your BMWs, your Lamborghinis, even the Porsches, you know, they're just a much finer pick for all the drivers out there, and hopefully we can see more Mercedes come back into the fray in future. Maybe they haven't paid iRacing enough, I don't know. Here's Dennis Grabowski and Anders Meyer battling together. I mean, that BMW's ugly enough. You don't need to rub it against the back of the ugly rear end of the Ferrari either, to be fair. Ferrari definitely a car of two halves. It's very pointy and lovely at the front, but then it just looks like some weird rounded off thing that they lost the will to live over designing at the back. Still, it is a great battle of two very different cars. Mid-engined, beautiful Ferrari, and of course, then the front-engined, big, bulky housing estate that is the BMW. Makes even the Bentley look small. But it's just great to see such different cars so close in performance, isn't it, Paul?
I was fortunate enough that in June last year I got to commentate on one of the early sort of, not factory team, but one of the pay teams who had bought the car, the 296. It was one of the early few rounds that the car had been around in. In fact, I think it was the first round of the Hankook 24-hour series that had run in, and it is spectacular. Is that car in person? It's got a back end that only a mother could love, or a partner, depending on. But anyway, but certainly it does the business. It is a rapid car. It has changed how GT3 racing is approached now, and how they do that. Now, interesting here, Ross McFarlane, Alex Davidson have dropped off the back of the front three. Now, the front three kept the pace going, and these two had to back off a little bit. They are the first two Lamborghinis at the front. Are we seeing maybe that the Lamborghinis haven't quite got the long pace out there?
Yeah, maybe that, or the fuel preservation as well. I mean, it could have just come from one tiny mistake from Ross that's held the pair of them up. They haven't bothered to swap positions over it. Could be anything, really, but I don't know. Whether they're choosing to just save fuel on their own, reduce the pace a little bit, it's hard to know. That's sort of one of the only downsides, really, with sim racing sometimes, is we don't often get as much info in an endurance race when it comes to fuel strategies and tyre strategies as we would in the real world, but putting a positive spin on that, it keeps it very exciting because we don't know as much as we would. So I'm intrigued by this. I wasn't expecting to see this gap between the two of them, but yeah, I think, between the two of them and the group in front, and it could have come from all sorts of reasons. I'm extra excited to see what they make of it, how they turn that around for later on in the race.
Let me give you some 5-lap averages. The front three, as they just come across the line, I'm waiting for my timing screen to update itself here. So the 5-lap averages for the front three are all 33.5s. For McFarlane and Davidson, 33.9, 33.8. So they are losing a good 3 or 4 tenths of a second per lap now on average on the last 5 laps, are McFarlane and Davidson. We did start this race with 52 cars. We've currently got, at the moment, 49 officially running. I think Dwayne Hoffman and also Phil Samways are on pit road. Your race leaders at the front, Anderuti, Sedgwick, Bume, they are the three at the front right now overall in this race. They're also the top 3 pro drivers. Your top Pro-Am driver is actually Ben Palmer. So, it's Adam Watson, is the top Pro-Am in 13th ahead of Ben Palmer in 14th. And then Paul Webster, 3rd place in class in 17th. Top Am, Dan Blackwell in 16th place. Next Am, Jesse Payne-Wilkins, early championship leader, 24th. And then Craig Jones, 3rd placed in class, 29th overall. If you are wanting to keep up to date with everything going on in this race right now, timing.racespot.tv to keep up to date with everything going on in this race. And what you will see is Colin Campbell is the latest one to come onto pit road.
I think this is going to start to, not infuriate, that's maybe a little bit far, but frustrate Anderuti at this point, because he's been doing all he can do to drive as quickly as possible every single lap, and the guys behind have just sat there and taken advantage of that tasty, tasty slipstream and saving fuel of their own while doing it. It's one of those helpless moments right now that Anderuti is in. He's done a great job with this stint. The guys haven't really challenged him for anything. It looks like there's been a bit of an incident there down at the Interlagos, but it's just, there's nothing he can do. It's a painful thing to see, but he's going to probably come out behind these guys after the first set of pit stops if they all pit together, unless he's doing something else that we don't know about. But I highly doubt he's going to be able to turn this around in the first set of pit stops. We'll have to see if he is then the one taking advantage of the slipstream in the second stint. Behind this, though, Paul, I've noticed that Slijepcevic has fallen into the clutches of Critchley, Grabowski and Meyer, and is now giving them slipstream as well. So he's not got that gap that he had earlier on.
Yeah, it's interesting how this race is all sort of ebbing and flowing and going along in this one. It was Nathan Healy, by the way, that you saw off track when the leaders went past Interlagos, so he's had issues out there. And Dan Blackwell has actually lost some places, down to 21st now for the AM leader. That's only 3 places ahead of Jesse Payne-Wilkins, who's second place in class. There's Ethan Critchley then, behind the wheel. We don't get to see his roll of tissues on the bedside cabinet anymore.
What?
Oh, that's a long story. But he had a bit of a cold.
Right.
And so yeah, Ethan there behind the wheel. As I said, last week picked up his trophy for finishing second place in the Danny Ricciardo karting series for 2023, but he's under attack from Grabowski, and Grabowski's just going to go through. Oh, and there's Healy again! Oh, that Audi does not look good through to Interlagos.
Absolutely not. I'm going to go and check in with the doctors after this, because I've had a cold that's lasted about 31 years. But Grabowski making a nice bit of light work of that manoeuvre there, but again, just benefit from the slipstream out of turn 2, got the move done, and it was, no fuss made by Critchley. He knows how long the race is. He's not going to defend this like mad. He's not going to cause an issue. A lot of these guys all very close together here, though. That's number 4 of Mattia Catania. He's trying to defend right now from Thomas Cuvier. There's a Lamborghini flashing its lights a lot back there. It's not Ben Gregory, is it? He does that a lot, doesn't he? But it's not actually Ben Gregory. It's the number 5, I believe, of Andy Archer in the Pro-Am. Just trying to get past... sorry, is it the Lamborghini?
It's the Ferrari. The Ferrari's been flashing a lot as well.
Oh, right. I saw the Lambo flash it, and I wondered which of the Ferrari was he was trying to get past. Joe Newman, isn't it? Yeah. In the 997. Right, there we go.
Yeah, thank you very much to Mr. Hedge in the chat, by the way. We are keeping an eye on the YouTube chat. There you go, Chaz. If you wondered what the backstory was, there you go. That's the
Love you, Hedge.
As we go up the hill once again, and that Porsche can be a little bit of a sitting duck on the high-speed sections. It's really good through the slower speed stuff, but Cavalier round the outside of the centre S. Can he make it work? The answer's he's there. You've got to leave the space, and he has done, but my goodness, this is hard fought for Catania and Cavalier, and Newman will be sat there going, can I come past? Excuse me, can I come past?
Yeah. I tell you what, he chopped his nose off that much. You would have thought Catania got a katana out, and wow, look at that instant bit of opportunism there down the inside by Joe Newman. Fantastic stuff. He runs wide on the exit, though. Well, I don't think that's going to hinder him too much. It's actually helped Catania, if anything, because that's exactly what he needed right now, is for the guys behind him to have a good old scrap. They've also got Andy Archer in there, just trying to look around the back end of that Porsche. It's amazing how tall the Porsche still is, despite the fact it's basically a flattened version of the 991, this GT3. I love the GT3 R992. It's a very pretty car, but it does look like someone just squashed the old one. Definitely just flattened it, like when you stand on a Hot Wheels car or something. But it's a great mix again of cars, all in one battle here. That's what we love about GT racing. They're all shapes and sizes, engine configurations and all sorts. And it's the BMW just ahead of them as well that's definitely going to be looking in its mirrors anytime soon. Although I think that's a lap down, actually, isn't it? The 911 machine. It is. It's Brain Balterson, who is in the M class. And again, he's doing a good job at moving out of the way there, Paul.
It was always Matchbox cars back in my day. As Anderuti, Sedgwick and Bume at the front, they're still together, and Sedgwick is keeping Anderuti very honest. Now, you've got traffic coming up ahead of you, a bunch of cars, 4 cars coming up ahead of them. Do you possibly think about making a pit stop? Because you are going to reach traffic at some point. It's a question of where and how.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's pulling the trigger at the right moment, because sometimes you can very easily go prematurely on a strategy and make a split-second decision, and then the race will develop while you're in the pit stop, or while you come back out and you're in the sort of no man's land, you know, with no cars around you, a bit of clear air. You may think, oh, this is fantastic, but something may transpire ahead of you that helps the other drivers in the race. So you've got to really try and eke it out to the last moment. They do call it a gamble because it literally is one. You know, you never know how long you should hold on. I do expect to see Anderuti come in before the 2 Ferraris behind him, but I'm not sure that the Ferraris will have enough for an extra lap. This part of the circuit in particular is brilliant for saving fuel, because there is a long lift and coast section here into the first corner, especially for Bume as well, who's got double slipstream from the cars ahead. But again, it's a roll of that dice, isn't it, Paul?
It was Giuseppe Mascella is going to be the first car that they have to work their way around, and work around it they will have to do. 2 Altitude Esports Ferraris ahead of a World Sim Racing Lamborghini, and then behind them is the BMW of Anders Meyer. Meyer, of course, in his Racing Lab Esports car. So 3 teams, 4 cars, and we have got a couple of takers to pit road with early pit stops. Mattia Catania and also Matt Loveridge deciding now is the time to make that first pit stop.
Yeah, they're the ones pulling the trigger early on and maybe hoping for a bit of clear air, but with the way that the field is spread out now at the moment, Paul, I think people have just got to go for it anyway. You're not really going to have a massive chance to get in any clear air. I don't think there's any sort of huge pockets with any parts of the circuit without any traffic on them, so people are just realising that anybody, anywhere in the field, is going to come out with cars around them somewhere on the circuit, so they have to just pull that trigger now. Bume holding back a little bit from Cedric this time round, but then again, with him in so much slipstream, that's just going to help him stay with these guys ahead and drag him back forward. It's like they've got a bungee cord on the back of the cars in front of them. They've all got them tied together, but hats off to Anderuti, because for nearly the first, 40 minutes of this race, he's just been absolutely flawless so far, and the guys have been following cleanly as well. There's not been a single moment that we've seen where they've gone a little bit too close or a little bit too deep on the brakes, you know. It's so easy to do that when you're following the car in front and trying to save fuel, that you can just overdo it that tiny bit. But they've just been really controlled and really clean at the moment. I've loved watching this.
I think these 3 leaders will have been delighted to have seen Jack Osborne peel off into pit road, because that's one less car for them to worry about right now. 38 degrees track temperature. That track temperature has gone up 6 degrees from race start, and we're still climbing as well, so it is going to be a hot one. You will be seeing drivers taking tyres out there, because if you try and do this on one set of tyres, you are mighty brave or mighty stupid. I'll let you be the decider of which one's which. Still, we've got this little bit of a duel right now. Dennis Grabowski, I think it's showing as well, with the temperatures out there, that Grabowski has still got the fastest lap of this race, even though he was about 11th place when he set that.
Yeah, it's really slid down a hill, hasn't it? The lap times and the averages have got a lot lower very quickly. I mean, to be fair, having that 6-degree temperature change in just 40 minutes will feel awful in these cars. You will notice that over the course of the stint, especially with the tyres going off as that happens as well. There's this real horrible cross point of the tyres going off and then going off quicker and quicker. They'll really fall off a cliff. But Slijepcevic actually at the moment is really under pressure from Critchley. Critchley in the Lamborghini just filling his mirrors, and then he's got the pressure from Meyer behind as well. Meyer's going to be rubbing his hands together here, hoping that these guys get in a scrap and then he's got some way of taking advantage of what transpires in front of him. But again, we have 3 manufacturers glued together, and it is just an awesome thing to see these GT3 cars going the way they are. I must admit, the recent crop of GT3 cars on iRacing has been a fantastic addition. They've done a really solid job with them, and certainly the balance and performance seems a lot better than it was in the past, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Mark Kent, in the YouTube chat, letting us know that Matt Loveridge's tyres were utterly gone. He's been struggling for a while on his stream, so that's good to see. Thank you very much for the intel there. Ben Cullen, Michael Gray. Now, Michael Gray did win the reverse grid race last time out at Imola. It's not really going to be doing that here today, unfortunately. No spin of the wheel for him this week. But currently, Michael Gray, gain of 1 place. Ben Cullen, get this, a gain of 20 places.
Having a fantastic run, isn't he, at the moment? A really solid run, but shows you again the size of the field with the fact that he's gained 20 places and he's still in 24th position. But that's what we love about the World GT Championship. They've always had big, beefy grids, and drivers have always got somebody to race as well. From a competitor's perspective, it's always a great series to be in because there's always someone of a similar skill level or someone in the same class to battle with. Slijepcevic has come into the pit lane here. Very intriguing.
Yes, I wonder if it was tyres. Maybe he'd pushed a little bit too early. Arthur Fertel as well onto pit road, although we are about that time. 4 pit stops to happen. Remember the fuel tanks, they are limited in this race to around about 70%. So here's Arthur Fertel on screen. Axel Slijepcevic as well on pit road. Slijepcevic, about a 16-second pit stop for him, so that's a relatively short stop compared to the other pit stops that we have seen that have been planned.
Yeah, maybe he was prioritising the tyres over the fuel in that one, and he was just taking as little fuel as possible just to have his sort of short stop, as we say, because let's not forget they usually will have, well, they have to have 2 pit stops in these races. Whether they take a shorter amount of fuel in the first one or the second one is up to them, and obviously keeps us and their competitors guessing. So I'm wondering whether he's gone for that this time round, although it's not shorter by enough to signify that that is his short stop, if that makes sense. Here's one of his teammates, James Buemi, reigning champion, car number 1, currently in P3, sat behind Cedric and Anderuti, expecting to see potentially another, maybe just 1 lap for these guys very soon, nearly at the 45-minute mark of the race. It's certainly, I'd say it's a nerve-wracking time for Anderuti because he's the one that's going to get to the pit lane first. The guys behind, albeit only a few car lengths, have still got the benefit of being able to react to what he does as opposed to it being the other way around.
Well, we did see last week in the first race that Anderuti actually was able to put less fuel in the pit stop and come out still ahead because he'd himself been doing lifting and coasting. Yes, he'd been leading the whole of that first stint of the race last week, but he'd been lifting and coasting and managing his fuel. So I think we'll be expected to see something similar again from Leandro, and be intriguing to see whether he could get the jump over Jack Sedgwick, who I think it'll be safe to say that he was not happy with how his performance was last week at Imola. But he seems to be really comfortable around this Interlagos circuit, does Jack in that Inex racing car. Ethan Critchley and Anders Meyer, they are 7th and 8th place. They've fallen a little bit back off of the back of Denis Grabowski. And yeah, that's where that gap of Axel Slijepcevic was. Grabowski's not too far back from, oh well, I say that, it's about 4 seconds back from Alex Davidson. So Davidson and McFarlane seem to be in a solid 4th and 5th place for the teammates, but I don't think they'll be happy with that unless they have got some cunning plan, like Baldrick would say, and has got one out. Oh, Newman's around. What's happened to here? And there was somebody else involved in that one as well, but that was Newman towards the end of lap at Maguglia.
Yeah, easy to do it by yourself here, just catching a wheel on the curbs as the car goes one way then the other. There's a lot of compression and crests here. I think the 25 is going to give him some help.
Oh.
Yeah, just a little bit late down the inside. I think it was just a case of missing their braking point actually from the number 25 machine. That is a big, big shame to see. But Newman, innocent party there. That was Thomas Cuvier, I should say. Dwayne Hoffman having another spin. The Audi really doesn't like to see the Interlagos, does it, Paul?
No, it does not at all.
Then again, it never liked corners when I drove it either, to be honest.
Well, this is the Evolution, don't forget.
Oh, yes.
It's not as bad as the old car, but there has actually been one of the pro drivers say yes. One of the Audi Sport drivers actually say yes, but no, the new car is better, but it will still bite you. So it's good to see that iRacing have incorporated that into the car to make it like the real cousin of it, as we're on board with Anders Meyer right now.
Yeah, I always remember an evening with the World GT Championship that included 3 races at Suzuka, and I think all 3 of my races ended up in the wall very heavily at 130R because the skinny back-end rear wing on that car was just useless. But it was a great fun car to drive at the same time. It really kept you on your toes, and that's the thing with mid-engined race cars. They've always got that pendulum effect at the back. You never know what they're going to do, but the front end feels so pointy, and when you have a race evening, when you've really got the car switched on, it's such a wonderful feeling. And it goes the same in front engine cars as well, like your BMWs and your Mercedes. Once you've got over the fact that all of the weight and the huge engines in these things are at the front end of the car, you've got a setup that gets it oversteery and snappy enough, it just feels incredible. But they have that added stability over the sort of mid-engine cars like your Ferraris and your Audis that we see here. So there's always benefits and, of course, deficits to having these cars. But that's what's so exciting about GT3 racing these days. There's so many to choose from, and it all comes down to driving style sometimes.
Yes, it certainly is, and it's whatever suits your fancy as to what you actually drive, and it's, as you say, whatever suits your driving style as well. We have to do a little bit of parish notices whilst we're here. The instant limit for an endurance round is 21 before you end up on pit road. As soon as you hit that 21st incident point, that is it. You have to take a drive through the pit lane, and with this pit lane, it's a bit of a funny one because it's such a high speed start and finish straight as McFarlane and Davidson come onto pit road for their first pit stops. You do lose a bit of time, but it's not as bad as, say, in Imola last week.
That's the thing. It's amazing how the strategy and the format can vary so much from race to race, just down to how the drivers actually drive the things lap after lap. It's part of the versatility that you need to race in a championship like this, and of course race cars like this that are as sensitive to setup changes and strategy like this. We have the 2 WSR Esports Lamborghinis here, Ross McFarlane and Alex Davidson, entering in flying formation and leaving in flying formation as well. Nicely done, gentlemen. They make their way out now, but again, it's that intrigue of where they'll end up after they've sort of slotted back in with the other drivers around them that have completed their pit stops. They've got the 777 just in front of them there, which I believe is not a lap down on them, is it, actually? Couldn't find them on the timing.
It will be Jack Osborne. Yeah,
yes.
Jack Osborne's a lap down on them. They have come out in 13th and 14th places, 27.5 seconds in the pit stall for them. So that is going to be the time that we'll look at, as we've got a little bit of side-by-side action between the 11. That is going to be it's going to be Byron Crawford, isn't it? And his teammates currently on pit road. So Crawford then with that little bit of action, as Anders Meyer now deciding now's the time to pit. Behind Byron is Ben Palmer, so it was Jeremy Bonsaudeau who was there. Car 38 is stopped out on track at the moment. That's Stephen Koenig. I think that was just letting some cars past. We have got a few takers onto pit road now, Chaz, so we are at that pit stop cycle.
Yeah, definitely. There's less variation in it now. There's no sort of grey area around it. That's Adam Watson in the pit lane in the number 291 Porsche. There is also the BMW of Daniel Sedgley in there from the Pro class as well. He's just got moving again. The 3M Ferrari hops up onto the jack. Sanders Meyer gets moving. And also the Porsche of Thomas Cuvier comes in. There's the Altitude 992 GT3R. Mighty fine looking machine. I really like the silver effect that they've got on the Altitude esports cars. They look spot on. The guys have done a great job on it. They used to have this strange white colour about them, but it was still a metallic white. It was almost pearlescent, but it, I don't know, it just never quite suited. And I did tell Mark Fletcher that every single time I saw him and ridiculed over it. So maybe he listened to me, and that's why they're silver now. I don't know. But still, they look great.
We've got it. Oh, Anderuti is stopped out on track. So too is Jack Sedgwick. Sedgwick is stopped as well. Don't say that something has happened coming onto pit road.
No.
Sedgwick is in the round the wrong way in pit road. We've got another spinner. My goodness, is that Ethan Critchley? It is. My goodness, what on earth has happened onto pit road here?
Someone installed a speed bump or something. What have these guys hit if not each other? Critchley's had a separate incident, maybe coming onto
and
pit road.
Third.
As
he's done for the race lead.
Oh man! After running a stint like that, that's how easily it can all fall apart. Let's have a look then. Is it going to be a case of Anderuti getting on the brakes and getting hit by Sedgwick, or is it going to be a case of Buemi thinking that oh no? That looked like some sort of hardware failure to me, Paul. It just snapped left.
Yeah, that didn't look right.
No.
And he's stuck in the middle of the road, and Ethan Critchley's got to come round. Let's watch the steering wheel. Now, what happens here? Is it a late call from it? Oh my goodness.
That's like he's let go of the wheel to set his fuel numbers or something, because it didn't go all the way left. That was like he took his hands off the wheel and the force feedback dragged it to the left. You know what I mean?
Well, what it does mean is a massive, massive, massive change at the lead. Anderuti, as Paul Webster comes out of pit road, Anderuti then taking a turn back onto the pit box. Jack Sedgwick, what has happened to him? He has actually got out, but he's way down. James Buemi is onto pit road as we speak right now, so it's huge drama. What on earth happened to Ethan Critchley? Now, does he collect Anderuti here? He comes flying around. It's blind as well, let's not forget, and he clips a wall.
Oh man, that's so devastating. The Ferrari ahead of him did an amazing job, and then the Lamborghini behind as well, doing a great job, because like you say, it's blind and you're doing way over 100 miles an hour still into that part. But normally when you'd see a hardware failure or a wheel go, it would go full right or full left. But that to me looks honestly like he's let go of the wheel and it's just the car's just got away from him. Sedgwick is so unlucky there though. There was nothing he could have done. He was trying to go into the pits himself, but the way that car bounced off the wall, there was no way. That's such a shame.
And then Ethan Critchley suddenly, where do I go? And he hit the wall, and oh my god. Fortunately, and I'm again somebody who looks at the positives, you're right on pit road, and you get a free repair in this series, so you do get to get yourself back out. Anderuti is out. He's just sat in the pit box, and that was Sedgwick on pit exit, and he's lit up the rears because I bet he turned off the traction control coming onto pit road to get it spun around, and he hasn't switched it back on again.
That is such a massive twist in this race. I was saying before about how clean and controlled and precise these guys were, and seemingly something out of their control or a little human error from Anderuti has just thrown this race on its head. Anderuti started the season as strongly as he could with a race victory and then pole position here at Interlagos. But now it's car 1, P1, and James Buemi has an now a 9-second lead, now 12 seconds over Grabowski. What a fantastic, fantastic turn of events that is in terms of Buemi. He won't wanted to have taken the lead that way. He'll have wanted to have a fair fight with the guys, I'm sure. He's a good sportsman himself, but at the end of the day, you've got to take these things when they come to you, and the Altitude Esports Ferrari now leads the way with a comfortable advantage over the rest of the field.
So, if you are Mark Fletcher watching this right now, you are absolutely delighted because in first, second, and third, James Buemi, Denis Grabowski, and Axel Slijeptrovic, they will be absolutely delighted. They won't ask any questions here about how they've got to the front, but it's got them to the front. And the thing is, they've all taken a shorter pit stop here. That's what's jumped Grabowski and Slijeptrovic ahead of McFarlane and Davidson. So don't count those two out of a podium just yet here in this race. Then looking at Pro-Am, I want to touch on these as well because we've just finished the first pit stop cycle. Adam Watson in 9th place in his Porsche for Altitude Esports Blue leads the Pro-Am category ahead of Ben Palmer, who's in 13th, and Paul Webster, who's in 14th. So second and third placed in Pro-Am. They are currently together, although a little bit of a gap between them. Well, Dan Blackwell does still lead it, even after his spin earlier on in the race. He's 21st in his 3M Ferrari, but he's got a couple of teammates around him helping him out here. But that's a real gaggle of cars that he's in. He doesn't want to get involved in anybody else's issues because Jesse Faye Wilkins in 25th, second in class, ahead of Cole Bellini, who's in 26th place, third in class.
Yeah, this is the thing. When you've got multiple classes in a championship like this and you're fighting for the lead or even a podium position in said class, and you've got loads of cars around you, you constantly scanning the relative in the bottom right of your screen or wherever you may have it and looking at the other cars as well to try and figure out who you're fighting with. As Cedric, very opportunistic down the inside, maybe driving a little bit frustrated, pushing on here. We've had it confirmed by Andy Shield, by the way, that it was a wheel disconnect in the form of what caused Anderuti's accident. So it did give away, well, it gave way, I should say, but I've never seen it do it so smoothly, but it's a massive, massive shame either way. But Cedric, you can tell, he's driving fired up now, isn't he, Paul? He wants to move forward as quickly as possible and hopefully, for his sake, drive away from these guys so he's not involved in any battles.
He does not want to be driving too angry. Oh, so down the inside the 3M car and it half spins. Here comes a teammate through. So, oh dearie me, it's all getting a bit tense there. And Dan Blackwell in the lead of Am takes advantage of the mistake from Joe Newman, who tried to make the move on James Abram, who, by the way, is up 20 places right now, is James. So good race so far in this one. But yeah, my goodness, this race has turned upside down. We've got another pit stop sequence to come up in this one, so stick around for this. And also, we have had our first taker to pit road to serve a drive-through penalty, Nathan Healy.
That's a shame for Nathan, but needs must. Rules are rules. There's got a fantastic battle going on here, actually, between the three 3M Ferraris, you could say. And funnily enough, the leader of the three of them is actually the Am driver at this moment in time, which is Dan Blackwell ahead of Newman. And then we've got Thomas Cuvier in the thick of this as well, trying to get back ahead of... apologies, actually. That is the 997 and Joe Newman there in front of him, and it's James Ibram ahead of them. Sorry, my timing didn't refresh for a moment there. But yeah, Cuvier's been in the wars throughout this race as well in that Porsche. He's going to need a lie down after this one. But I'm telling you what, Paul, we've got 3 altitude cars in the top 3. I always tell Mark Fletcher to sort their marketing out, to have some sort of slogan about altitude being higher than everybody else, but he doesn't listen to me. It's moments like this where I wish he had. But they'll be a happy boy right now, to say the least. Catania will be happy as well, actually, we're looking at now, because for once, he's not really got a million cars around him. But then again, he's got his old sparring partner, Andy Archer, with him as well. He's been stuck together this whole race, these pair.
Yeah, absolutely. So, they're carrying on, and they're going to carry on for the rest of this race, pretty much together all the way through. But yes, Anderuti has actually been into the driver's chat on the virtual paddock, as me and Peter call it, in the driver's Discord, and has apologised mid-race because, well, he's out of the race. He's retired. He's done for the day. We've had 6 retirements: Phil Samways, Colin Campbell, Adam Tompkins, Alan Mystic, Chris Gooch, and then, most notably, the leader of 30 laps of this race, Leandro Anderuti. But I think, given what's happened so far, there could still be some twists and turns in this race. But one thing that James Bume won't be minding is that 12-second lead that he has right now. That is a really comfortable position to be in with 47 minutes remaining.
Yeah, definitely, but the main thing he needs to do now is focus on not getting complacent. It's so easy as the race leader when you've got a comfortable gap like that to just take your foot off the gas that slight bit and then just sort of, I don't know, miss out on opportunities or just give away free time. And I know that Bumi's rapid, and we all do by now. At the end of the day, he's reigning champion here in the World GT Championship. But again, you've just got to stay in your own head and make sure you focus on the bigger picture and the target. And I think that he will definitely feel a bit more comfortable with the fact he's got 2 teammates behind him. However, we know better than he knows that that is very temporary at the moment. A good battle here at the front of the AM class, Paul.
Yes, absolutely. Second place in AM then, Jesse Payne-Wilkins, the championship leader coming into this round, just ahead of Andrea Corbellini in that Mercedes, and it's been a steady away job for Corbellini, I must say. It's been just quietly going about business and up 1 place from where it started, but doing good so far in that number 69 Mercedes. And they so find themselves 25th, 26th place. And of course, with this championship, it is the position that you finish in is the points that you take. There's not individual point structures for each of the categories of Pro, Pro-Am and Am. Wherever you finish is the points that you take. So for drivers like this, in their championship battle against someone like Dan Blackwell, who's in 19th, they want to also be moving forward and trying to gain themselves positions.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's every single position matters. So sometimes in these sorts of championships, you'll see drivers backing out of moves or not challenging drivers in, let's say, higher classes than them. If you had an AM driver chasing the Pro-Am, for example. But here you will see them taking opportunity to go against them if the opportunity arises. Now, we've had drive-throughs, it seems, for the 12 and 911 cars, Paul, hitting the incident limits. Easy to do round here, though, isn't it, Interlagos? There's a lot of runoff that's very inviting, and it's easy to just dip a wheel over that when you're pushing the car to the limit.
Absolutely. Thomas Caviglia, by the way, you just saw on pit road for a second time. Should be able to make it to the end, you know. 45 minutes. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to just be a little bit frugal with the old throttle pedal, but this Porsche, me and Peter have said in previous last season, we said that we found that the most frugal car out there was the Porsche 911 GT3R, and that was our top tip of if you are going to buy a GT4 car and want to skimp on the fuel costs, get a Porsche. The two WSR Lamborghinis, well, they won't worry about that with their V10 engines. Oh, and splitting a spinning Dwayne Hoffman, who was recovering back to track there. I think Ross and Alex would have both had a little bit of a heart-in-mouth moment there.
Yeah, that was a very, very scary moment for those guys there, but great reaction times, really tidy stuff. This is how it all came about. Again, the Audi just going round at Desida del Lago. Recovers onto the circuit. Maybe thinks that he's got clear air. He's not technically back on the circuit yet, but I think he wanted to try and get to the inside line, hoping they could sweep around the outside there, Paul. What do you reckon?
I think you're always safer just driving through the runoff there all the way to the straight, because you're definitely not going to collect it on. Because again, it's a bit of a blind entry into that corner, so if there's a car in the middle of the in the racing line when you come around, then you're going to get caught out by that. So yeah, it's always a bit more prudent to hold the get back up to speed, almost like you're driving on a slip road onto a motorway. It's there to get you up to the speed of the motorway traffic, or at least it would be if it wasn't the M62 at rush hour. But certainly, the asphalt is there to use. Why not use it to get up to speed? As once again with Corbellini in that 24th place, holding on to that place. And in fact, that has been a switch of positions, hasn't it?
Yeah, the Mercedes now moving ahead of the Audi of Jesse Payne-Wilkins. So second place in the AM class for Andrea Corbellini. It's a very racing driver name indeed, isn't it, for Andrea? And he's very, very focused indeed. You can just see as well, if you keep your eye on his eyes, just quickly glancing at information, keeping his eyes on the road. Whenever you see a driver cam like this, I love it, because you always get to just see those glimpses that they're making of how quickly they're checking out in all the information from all sorts of angles. It's mega to see. You know, there's a lot to think about, a lot to do when you're the only one there and you've not got an entire team keeping your eye on how the car's behaving.
As we hear from the AI version of Chaz there, I think just a little bit of a connection issue there. But yeah, Corbellini, you can see just a nice relaxed position. That's what you need to be in when you're doing one of these races for this long. Just be in a nice sort of neutral, relaxed position. You can't be all tense and hunched up because the car reacts to that when you're tense, because you're more abrupt and sudden with your steering inputs, and you're more likely to end up with an incident that way. So yeah, it was good to see how just relaxed and calm that Corbellini was there, and as we say, up to 24th now in this race, and crucially second placed driver in AM. The WSR cars, well, they're still carrying on, but this is Ethan Critchley, who of course got caught up in that incident onto pit road. Got Michael Avdurka behind, who's a compatriot from the World Sim Racing team, in 11th. Ahead of them, Adam Watson, who actually did have the longer pit stop compared to his teammates from Altitude Esports. So Watson went long the first stop for his fuel stop. We're thinking shorter final pit stop here, Chaz.
Yeah, apologies for that. I'm not quite sure if it's sorted itself out now, but yeah, I'm not quite sure what that was actually causing that, unfortunately. So yeah, it's one of those things, one of the mysteries, I suppose. A lot of programs and information coming my way when we do these broadcasts, so could have been anything. Flash of the lights there from the 87 machine. Is that? Oh, no, sorry, 97 of Ethan Critchley, who wants to try and make his way back up the order after the earlier incident. It's good to see that he's carried on though, because it's very easy sometimes to give up after a large incident like that, and the frustration the better of you and not carry on. But in a championship as competitive as this ball, you have to take every opportunity to get points.
Yeah, you certainly do. And as we carry on then, 39 minutes and 52 seconds remaining in this race. Axel Slijepčević on to pit road, so that's the first of the top three who took that slower, that shorter pit stop to start with. Has decided to make their second pit stop now, just under 40 minutes remaining, as somebody with possibly the worst connection I've ever seen in the pit road behind there as well. But back out and running then is Axel, and down pit road, and it's a tricky pit stop to do that, and it's a longer pit stop then, 23 seconds, which I think will add up to about what the others have been doing, so I think it will all add up in the end. Simon Lersing, by the way, meatball mechanical warning flag for him. And so issues for Simon, who actually did take a turn back to pit road. I think that's who we saw with the slightly dodgy connection car. There are a couple of cars on the bubble as well in terms of a penalty, a drive-through penalty in this race here as well. So with that, it is the start of this pit stop cycle, and I don't expect to see this pit stop cycle finish until about let's see, about sort of 11-12 minutes to go in this race. So we're going to be a little while before we find out what is going to go on here and what will happen in terms of strategy here. But it is James Bume in the lead of this race, ahead of his teammate Denis Grabowski in second place. Then it is Ross McFarlane, Alex Davidson, the two teammates, so the two World Sim Racing esports drivers by book kicker, should I say. They are in third and fourth place ahead of Arthur Thurtle. And Anders Meyer, 6th place right now for Anders, so we're in a good place. And I'm hoping that Chaz has quickly got and put 50p in the meter and has a working internet connection. Yes, he does.
Yes, I do. I'm really not sure what caused that, everybody. I'm really sorry, but I've just had a quick reset of everything, closed all of my Google Chrome tabs and everything else, and we're all good. But yeah, a fantastic race so far with so many different elements and sort of phases to it with these drivers. But this is one of the most exciting parts now because the field is all so spread out in places. You know, there's still battles here and there. There's always traffic for people to deal with. There's always an obstacle now. So there's a lot more to this later phase of the race. You know, there's a bit more fatigue. The tyres are a bit worn out. The cars are getting lighter on fuel after their second stops as well. I mean, there's still over half an hour to go, but there's a lot more vibrance to the circuit. There's always an obstacle, like I say. It's very exciting. This is where the drivers need to be most switched on, but it's probably the most tired they'll be through the race.
As Alpha Fertile then for Altitude Esports Blue onto pit road for the latest pit stop, as we cut back to that third and fourth place, and that I think is a key as to why we're not seeing any improvements in lap times and why I think people have been struggling out there. We have gained 10 degrees Celsius, Chaz, from when we started this race about an hour and 10 minutes ago. So that is quite an abrupt difference, and drivers will have set up the cars for one set of weather, and to have it getting so much hotter, that really does throw a spanner in the works, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, as well, I mean, I mentioned a moment ago, at this stage of the race, and when you're this long through a stint, or this far through a stint, the tyres will be going off. And when the temperature's rising with that, it only adds to the curve and the problem gets worse. There are a lot of drivers in this field that will be really well tuned to adapting to the conditions and the tyres going off. There's so many people. I mean, we've both raced against them before, Paul. You know, there's drivers that can be just as quick at the end of a race somehow compared to the speed they were doing at the beginning of the race. It's just terrifying, the talent of some of these drivers. We've got Grabowski in the pit lane as of right now. He makes his way in, but we know that he was going to be a bit out of sync because he made a shorter pit stop earlier on, didn't he?
Yeah, and that means that James Bume should be heading onto pit road very shortly as well from the race lead. So Ross McFarlane and Alex Davidson might be playing the long game here, as McFarlane just runs a little bit wide through to see the Interlagos. Here is James Bume then, race leader in his Altitude Esports Ferrari 296 GT3. It is spectacular as this machine, I can tell you. The owner of the car that we saw last year, just in the pit lane on Monaco plates, he had a Maybach and also an Aston Martin Valkyrie.
Oh, heck.
So the owner of that team had a bit of brass to him. As here comes Bume onto pit road.
Absolutely flying in as well. Look how late on the brakes he is there. I thought that was a little bit of an interesting feature of the Ferrari there, where he slams on the brakes that hard that the hazards come on like a road car. But no, that's the pit lane speed limiter, of course. But James Bume lines the car up nicely with where his pit box is going to be. Slight angle to the right as he comes to a stop. And he gets ready to continue on for the final stint of the race. Nice to see the sort of rubber spatters and the dead flies along the car as well. It's nice how iRacing have continued to implement the cars getting dirtier over a race. Not as much as they used to, I don't think, but still, they look natural and all cacked up for it, which I love. Davidson here on the back of his teammate McFarlane, as he has been for the whole race, and there is the difference between them at the moment. Bume already coming out of the pit lane, with a very optimal pit lane exit, and to be fair, that's hardly an entire pit stop's distance between them, is it, Paul?
No, certainly not. I mean, when you consider that cone to cone, you're talking about 30-something seconds. Yeah, I think right now, certainly, James Bume is in a very comfortable position. But he did the hard work to start with. He sat with the race leaders of Anderuti and of Jack Sedgwick, sat with them for all of that first stint, and then ends up being fortuitous in the position that he found himself with that incident onto pit road, and that means that he was able to take advantage of that. But they had that gap, though. That's the thing. They had that gap over the rest of the field, whereas right now McFarlane and Davidson have just not had an answer to them.
No, that's the thing. Sometimes you'll see drivers have this response when somebody starts to make it very clear what their strategy is or what the plan is to try and either drive away or sit in the slipstream. Drivers will often have a response queued up for that. I mentioned adapting earlier on. So part of a key mentality of a driver is to be able to adapt to what the other drivers around you are doing, whether it helps you race or whether it just sort of limits damage, damage limitation over the course of a 1 hour 45-minute race in particular. But at this point, they've just not had that answer. This is James Buemi getting held up here by An BMW. It's a rather large thing to get held up by as well, to be fair. He flashes the lights, maybe in a little bit of disagreement with the fact that said BMW wasn't getting out of the way, but he is now safely through and continues on. Just trying to figure out which of the cars that was, but it was Sedgley, you're right. But
that was for position. I don't know why you'd flash your headlights if it was for position.
Yeah, apologies. I thought he was lapping him actually, but I don't know. Maybe Buemi feels that because he's on a different strategy, he should be let through, but at the end of the day, it's a racing circuit. Maybe he was trying to put him off. Maybe it was the good old Ben Gregory method of flash your lights a million times a lap and it might work. But still, interesting from Buemi, but he's now in a bit more clear air and can move ahead of Sedgley. That'll be why I couldn't find him. I was looking really far down the order to see who he was lapping, but no, that's for 4th position on the road at this moment in time. It's Anders Meyer, just a few car lengths ahead of him. And then, of course, further up the road, about 10 seconds ahead, we have McFarlane and Davidson.
If is the biggest word in motorsport. Murray Walker used to say that, and it's a question of if that incident hadn't happened. This just goes to show, I think, with where Buemi is here in respect to everybody else, I think this goes to show about where we would have expected Anderuti and Sedgwick to be if here is at Buemi. And it's a big if. I mean, lots of things could happen in a race, as we've seen today. But it just gives you... I think Jack Sedgwick will be the biggest one that will be disappointed about what happened there, because he felt after a bad week last week he would have wanted a really good result.
Yeah, it's a massive shame that it happened that way. And I mean, to be fair, it was nice to see that Anderuti had almost immediately apologised in Discord. Obviously, Sedgwick would not have seen that yet. He's continued on with his race, and he's done well to recover, to be fair, because, like I said before, so many people would have just given up and thought, nope, I'm not doing it. He did have a few more moments after his recovery as well, though, so he's certainly ploughing on now. He's up there in 13th place outright, and like you said before, Paul, it's overall positions that get you points here, so 13th place in a field of so many cars, it's still going to be a big chunk of points for his championship. You and I have both watched many series, I'm sure, that have been separated by 1 or even less points in the form of Formula 1 many, many moons ago. So as long as you can score as many points as possible, you've done your bit in the situation that you were presented. And Sedgwick is an absolutely rapid driver. We've seen him for a number of seasons now in the World GT Championship, and it's great to have him back on board again. It's good to see the determination to carry on.
I think myself and producer Conor Magic, we were getting sick of having championship deciders decided by a single point. We had about a space of, I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks, where we had 3 races, 3 championships all get decided on the last lap of a race. So it's these things can happen, and you're absolutely right. It's important for you. The beauty of this series is that you can get a free full repair of your car, and for you to be able to carry on and encourage you to carry on. I think it's important, if you're in this position of Jack Sedgwick, of just getting right, forget that, get out there, let's get racing, and finish this race and get whatever points I can salvage out of this one.
Yeah, that's it. Damage limitation, I said before, and that's certainly the method here. Sure, it's very early in a season, but you'd rather score some points here early in a season, not knowing what's coming your way for the rest of the campaign, than obviously you have to go chasing your tail at the end of the championship to scramble for points and put yourself under a lot of pressure. The more you can do early on in a season makes the end of a season that little bit easier. So yeah, certainly big picture game thinking here from Jack Sedgwick. He's got Arthur Thurtle behind him as well, and I've seen myself from other championships recently that Thurtle is no slouch whatsoever. So he's in good company as they chase down Webster and Palmer. Ben Palmer, of course, raced in the real world quite a lot as well in the Mini JCWs, the Mini Challenge. Also won the, I think it was still called the Michelin UK Clio Cup when Ben raced in it. I think he almost won every race in a season a few moons ago, and it was a fuel line issue that stopped him from winning that one race that he didn't win as well. So, I mean, Ben's already a scary enough driver to have behind you, but in that Lamborghini as well, possibly the most menacing race car GT3 racing's ever seen. I wouldn't want him in my rearview mirror, to be fair. He's a good laugh and all, is Ben. But this is a great battle, actually, between himself and Webster, and this is for second in Pro-Am as well, Paul.
Yes, it certainly is. Webster to the inside.
Tidy.
No, that's not, because that is Evdoka and Watt. That's Evdoka and Watt and Critchley.
It's not. That's number two.
No, it's
That's Ben
Palmer. Yeah, so that must have been a lapping car then. Yeah, I'll get my car numbers ready. Get my fingers out and count that. Number 33. Yeah, that is not. That is not Paul Webster. You got my hopes up there, then, Chaz.
I'm so sorry, everyone.
That's the
I'm
Mark
so
Hutchinson, who's had a pit stop, had a second pit stop, and was unlapping himself.
Where on earth is Paul Webster then? Because it says he's 4 tenths behind him. That was Paul in the Audi, isn't it?
Yes.
See, this, I said this before the broadcast, didn't I, Paul? Paul used to drive for altitude I'm sure.
Spots, yeah.
So I saw an altitude car and I instantly thought Paul Webster. I'm so sorry, everybody. That is dreadful. That's the downside to jumping in for just 1 week. I'm going to blame it on that. Sorry.
Well, I should have known better. But anyway, Paul Webster, he is getting a little bit of help, though, from his former team there, because the Audi, right behind, the red, black and white, or is it red, black and grey Audi? It's white. It certainly is right on the tail of Ben Palmer. Now, pit stop-wise, there's only a lap between them when they came in. So Paul Webster came in a lap later than Ben Palmer, and they both took long pit stops. 32 seconds for Paul Webster, 30.6 for Palmer. So there's not a lot of difference in terms of strategy. These two have been pretty close together all race as well.
Yeah, definitely. They've been sparring partners all race long so far. 1 hour and 20 minutes in, and now Webster is tucked right up behind the back of the Lamborghini. Very similar cars, these cars. Basically the same chassis underneath, the same 5.2 litre V10 that goes into both of them, but still on the outside, bodywork wise, very angular and exciting looking race cars. It's great to have the Evo 2 version of this Audi R8 GT3 here on iRacing, and that livery certainly complements all of the flicks and canards and tiny little carbon fibre pieces that it has to show off as well. But the Lamborghini, you know, it doesn't look like an outdated car at all. It is the Evo version of it, but we've had it for quite a while now here on iRacing. Still definitely looks in place against its Audi counterpart, let's say. And two very, very quick drivers racing against one another for second place in their respective class. Still Blackwell leading the AM class as well, Paul. He's not really been challenged actually for quite a while at the lead of that class, has he?
No, he's been certainly solid in his position out there in the field. So the 3M UK driver certainly doing a good job for his outfit, as Ethan Critchley heads onto pit road as well for his pit stop. But yeah, Dan Blackwell doing a sterling job in 16th at the moment. Does owe us a second pit stop though, so we are still waiting for this final round of pit stops before we do get everything sorted out. There is Axel Slipčević looking to the inside of a couple of lap traffic. Byron Crawford is one of those drivers, and is that Livingston with him as well down the inside, and yes, the 23 does go through.
Nice tidy stuff that, and this is the thing, we've seen a very level-headed approach from a number of drivers here, where if we would have been still doing sprint racing, you know, people would have defended until the cows come home, but drivers have been thinking about the long-term gains of just letting a driver through, don't cost yourself too much time, and that's what it's all about, you know, mitigating risk, as they say. And Grabowski now moves up in extra position into 8th place on the road, or at least makes his way through tidily to continue on his way in clean air, I should say. But this is it. It's part of the negotiating the traffic that comes with this final sort of phase of the race. Makes it all that more difficult. But again, if you've been in a league long enough and you've been around the same people here on iRacing, then you learn who you can trust a bit more than others sometimes in traffic situations, and that adds a benefit to it as well, doesn't it?
It certainly does. We have had the question, by the way, in the chat. Thank you very much to Yoni Hagner for asking this. Does this series have its own balance of performance? I'm just looking through the rule book. I can't actually see one myself. Just very quickly sort of looking at that. So it doesn't appear that way. So no, it's going by the iRacing balance of performance here. And yeah, it just goes to show, just again, we've been talking about it through this this race here, Chaz, that iRacing, they have done a pretty good job of this this balanced performance.
Just had it confirmed by Andy Shield that they don't do their own balance of performance. They leave it just down to iRacing, and again, yeah, an absolute credit to them for doing that. And yeah, iRacing's BOP has been spot on. Like I said earlier, you know, we used to have entire fields of just Mercedes with 1 or 2 Ferraris and sprinkled in, and the odd McLaren as well for the nutcases that wanted to drive that thing. But it's refreshing to see it. Never knowing what manufacturer is going to win a race. You know, there's still, in the last couple of years, in other categories like the GT4s, we've seen fields that are just Porsches and maybe 1 or 2 BMWs. Now you get a massive spread of it. You know, I broadcast a series that runs GT4s, and we have all 5 manufacturers in the top 6 pretty much all the time. It's great to watch, really, really is. And these GT3s are another example of that.
The drivers that we need to keep an eye on as Daniel Sedgley comes on to pit road, Denis Grabowski and Axel Slijepcevic have both had their second pit stop. They are running about, well, Slijepcevic is running about 36 seconds, 35 seconds off of McFarlane and Davidson. I think that both Davidson and McFarlane will fall behind Slijepcevic after their second pit stop, unless they have an absolutely lightning stop, which they could potentially do with 20 minutes remaining in this race.
Yeah, everything's possible, isn't it? I mean, we've seen earlier how quickly the incident flipped things on its head. So it's tough to call sometimes, because certain drivers, you know, they'll stay so clean and so precise throughout a race, and then all it takes is just one moment of pushing that little bit too hard and making a mistake, and all of a sudden it can come crumbling down, can't it? That tiny misjudgment. We saw it earlier on, didn't we, from I believe it was from Cuvier, as Thomas went to go past the Audi. That's cost him a lot of time, and that's thrown him back into the battle. So yeah, again, it's just down to self-preservation, I think, knowing when to send it down the inside and when not to.
Just for a little bit of reference, Matt Loveridge, who did a relatively short pit stop of about 17 seconds, was 31.5 seconds cone to cone. Well, the gap between Slijepcevic and McFarlane is 35 seconds. Now, you've also got to negotiate pit exit, which is quite narrow here, so you're not going to be going quite as fast. You're still shortcutting the first couple of corners a little bit, but you're not going quite as fast as those out on track. It's going to be interesting dynamic to see how that pans out. There's Jack Sedgwick, look to the inside, and through he goes on Ethan Critchley, or does he? Because Critchley's going to fight back on this one. Ethan is somebody who will fight all the way. He's a karter. If anything we know about karters is they will fight for a position.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. One of the most savage things about karting is often the fact that there's a winner and 20-odd losers. The second, third, fourth, all of it doesn't really matter in karting. You have to be the one that wins the race. You have your heats that sets your grid, and then you get your final. You either win the thing or you don't. It's really cutthroat stuff in karting, and it's great to see that Critchley is taking that mentality to this racing as well. Sedgwick will have his work cut out here to try and get past the Lamborghini. As we've seen, he's not giving up at all. And again, 2 very similar cars in terms of shape and engine configuration. Sorry, go on.
Davidson onto pit road, the first of your 2 leaders then from World Sim Racing Esports butt kicker onto the pit stop, and it's going to be, let's see what that time is, that pit box time. If it's about 10 seconds, then Ross and Alex have a hope against Slijepcevic, and bang on 10 seconds. Where's Slijepčević in all of this? He's going to be coming through the start and finish straight. I think Davidson's got it, so I think Ross McFarlane should have this as well.
Wow, it's really turned a corner again, this race now, as Bumi comes round the first corner, and look at that. Davidson is long gone up the road. He's side by side with Adam Watson, trying it down the inside already. And brilliant, brilliant stuff that is by Davidson. He's made it work.
Now, one thing I want to address here, I think 10 seconds is a bit too much to catch up, or even 13 seconds for Slijepčević. Grabowski, as well, is behind in all of this. I will say, though, that Slijepčević and Grabowski did take new tyres.
Yeah, maybe they've tried to cut a bit of a corner here, the Lamborghinis, and just eke it out in this final stint. They've not put themselves in a comfortable position where they can run and gun, but they have put themselves in a decent track position where they can try and maintain a gap, I think. It's certainly a roll of the dice again.
I can tell you 45 degrees is the track temperature now. We are officially 13 degrees hotter than what we started at this race, and it is just still going up as that temperature. Yes, thank you very much to our producer Connor Maddock. Imagine if this was the afternoon.
It would be baking, absolutely baking hot. But then again, you know, it's barely even 10:15 in the morning, and it's still 45 degrees Celsius. Like I said before, it's the humidity that really helps exaggerate it as well. You can see a lot of the heat haze as well as the cars head down towards the likes of the Cida del Lago here. You'll see it on this following shot. You can just see that haze waving away in the background. Really gives you an idea of just how baking hot it is. And the circuit nice and shiny as well, as all the rubber gets plastered down onto it. There's been a change, of course, at the front of the Pro-Am class as Watson comes into the pits, Webster comes into the pits, Ben Palmer inherits that lead temporarily. We'll have to keep our eye on that as well, Paul, when they all come out of the pits respectively after their stops. Yeah,
we're going to have to keep an eye on lap times as well for Alex Davidson. This lap will be interesting to see what he does. Ross McFarlane, Anders Meyer, Michael Ovdoka, Ben Palmer, Jack Sedgwick, Andy Archer, Dan Blackwell, Joe Newman, Michael Gray, Jesse Payne-Wilkins and Kevin Stringer and Stephen Koenig, to be fair, all owe us a final pit stop here in this race, and here comes race leader Ross McFarlane then. We don't think he will come out in the lead because James Bumé was just too close to him through this stint, but it's where he comes out. Does he come out ahead of Alex Davidson? You would imagine so. He should be a little bit quicker in the box here. Waiting. What is going to be as slightly longer than Davidson in the box? Could this be then Davidson getting the jump over his teammate? They're going to be close out of pit exit because they're side by side.
Flying formation for WSR Esports here. These two have been glued to each other all race, and look at that. You can't even separate them on pit exit as well. Davidson goes ahead of McFarlane, but wow, there is barely 2 car lengths between them at this moment in time, and that is just running like clockwork, isn't it, Paul? These guys have always been good at this. When they were pure sims as well, they've just been perfectly ticking over and managing a strategy, and together they've made it work really, really well. They've got a decent gap over the likes of Grabowski and Slijepčević. There's a few car lengths there. They're not in slipstreaming range yet. This is great stuff.
Davidson's lap time last lap was a 34.0. Slijepčević's time was a 34.5. So yeah, even though that Slijepčević has got the newer tyres than both of the WSR Esports drivers, they have been able to work this strategy to perfection here in this race. Michael Gray comes onto pit road in Pro-Ams. That's another pit stop made. As I say, we're still waiting on a couple of drivers for their final pit stops, as there goes Michael Gray. He doesn't fade to grey. He's Michael Gray out of pit road, and away he goes again, that full tilt V Motorsport driver. Michael Ovdoka is the latest one onto pit road in that WSR Esports car, and that's going to be dropping him down a few places. So the strategy play was to take the longer pit stop at the first stop by the looks of things here.
Yeah, absolutely. They've really made it work for themselves, and the thing is as well, you've got to back up your strategy with decent enough lap times on the circuit as well. You know, you can't just bank on the strategy doing all of the work for you, and these guys have put in the lap times when they needed to. We were both a bit concerned earlier when they fell off from that original quintet and then obviously left the leaders to become a trio, but they've definitely played the right game here, and Slijepcevic is just going to have to push like mad now in these final moments. But let's not forget, we're nearly at about 3/4 distance of one of the old school sprint races still left to go, so 12 minutes is a mighty long time. There's a lot of laps left in this race at 1.5 minutes apiece. So these guys are going to have to crack on.
Has taken 47 seconds on pit road. Ooh. I have a funny feeling he was speeding onto pit road with that length of pit stop. Denis Grabowski is only about 1 3/4 seconds back off of Ross McFarlane, so I wouldn't write Dennis off of a potential 4th or even 3rd place here for the Altitude Esports team. There he is in his Ferrari. He's got a little bit of lap traffic ahead of him, but as they come across the line, it's car 19 that is in front of him, which is Till Sommerfeld. And to be fair, Till has moved out. We've got enough weather update. It's gone up another degree.
We're going to have to buy Connery a green screen at this point and get him one of them clicker things. But yeah, it's amazing to see that it's continued to climb by that much now. The circuit is going to start melting at some point soon. I mean, I imagine the tyres feel awful. But that's not good news if you're Davidson and McFarlane, really, because you're going to have to be pushing to stay ahead of Grabowski and trying to maintain that gap. And Grabowski and Slijepcevic will be feeling a bit more comfortable, you would think, with the newer tyres. But then again, they are going to fall off a mighty, mighty steep cliff compared to how they were behaving in the earlier stints when it was a bit cooler earlier on. Ben Palmer's just been in the pit lane, by the way, and he and Webster are right near each other once again, battling for second place in the Pro-Am class. But it looks like Watson has all but got that wrapped up.
Webster has actually come out ahead of Palmer through all of that. So yeah, change of position in your Pro-Am standings. Watson leads that one. Dan Blackwell, who is the leading AM, who owes us a final pit stop here, he is just ahead of Paul Webster here in the full tilt V. It's the V Motorsport car, isn't it, for Paul? Yes, it is. It's the V Motorsport car for him. Ben Palmer, 3rd place then for him in the WSR Esports outfit. But yeah, Webster will be delighted with this. Anders Meyer onto pit road now for his final pit stop. We are road Jack Sedgwick, Dan Blackwell, as I said, Jesse Payne-Wilkins and Stephen Koenig are the final ones yet to head to pit road. There goes Anders in that Racing Lab Esports BMW. And to be fair, could actually come out ahead and will come out ahead of Axel Slijepcevic. So good work for the BMW.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of having a later stop so close towards the end of the race. You can take much less fuel this time round, and he was in the pits for 8.7 seconds compared to the 23 of Axel Slijepcevic. So that certainly worked in Meyer's favour, gets him into a top 5 position. Question now is going to be whether he can hold on to that towards the end. Denis Grabowski starting to get closer and closer to the back of Ross McFarlane. The gap is only about 1.3 seconds right now, and the Lamborghinis are taking their turn to navigate through some traffic. Grabowski's gone past traffic of his own there in the form of the BMW that we saw earlier, which was Till Sommerfeld. And it's another one of the Porsches in front of him right now. Car number 32 just ahead of him. He needs to just make sure that he can cleanly negotiate past, maybe with a bit of slipstream here. This is the perfect opportunity for James to move out of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all about hitting traffic, not just hitting traffic, but where you hit it as well. Yeah. As to how you work your way through the field. 8 minutes remain here in this race. We've still got a couple of cars yet to head on to pit road, so we won't do our final rundown or the final catch-up of the top 3s very quickly, but certainly Grabowski now, he's caught up to the back of that Porsche, but here's the thing, it's a pro driver that's ahead, so they're going to be in similar pace, so to speak, so it's going to be difficult for him to lap him.
Yeah, that's it. There's a much sort of closer match between the two of them, and to be fair, I don't think
that the number 32 machine is going to want to move out of the way and give up so much time, actually. I think James is going to feel like he's going to just open himself up to Till Sommerfeld behind, because even though they're in different classes, you've got to think that Till could take points away from him with that. And look, Grabowski's had to do this on a compromised line, and that is not really what you want to see from James Ibrahim. That is affecting a battle here for the potential overall podium, and it's understandable now to see flashing lights from Grabowski. That's not great at all, is it, Paul?
And let me remind you at home, if you're thinking, well, blue flags are advisory, not in this series. You are expected to help facilitate the faster car past. And so, yeah, it's Grabowski who's getting really frustrated behind. The thing that Grabowski can't afford to do is end up getting involved in an incident with a driver who's a lap down.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be worst case scenario, really. He could lose all the time in the world, but you'd take that over having an incident with the driver ahead of you. If he just avoids hitting the back of him and getting caught out by him, that would be better. But look, he's forced to make an overtaking move rather than just driving past him. That's not good stuff, that, from James. I'm not happy to see that, to be honest with you. But James won't be happy to see the car behind him, which is Till Sommerfeld. But that's by the by now. It's part of the racing, unfortunately. If you're being lapped, he's flashing the lights back in return, which I really don't understand. I'm not quite sure, I should say, what that's signalling. But yeah, it's not really helped with Grabowski's charge, to say the least.
No, absolutely not. And I think it's unfortunately meant that we're not going to be getting a little bit of a showcase finale for the final step of the podium. But well, Grabowski, he won't give up. He'll keep on pushing Will Dennis, and there's a car spun around at the bottom of the hill. It's car number 12, which is Jeremy Bonsaudo. So the Boots and VDS by Undercut team, they've had a bit of a rough day of it today, haven't they, that team?
Yeah, definitely. It's not quite black and orange, but they're a bit black and blue after today. That's Johnny Elia just in front in the 111 Porsche. And you could just see, just going down through the gears, the pendulum nature of the mid-engined Lamborghini. It just swings its backside around through the first corner. And again, that's one of the challenges of Interlagos, isn't it, Paul? The undulation here is very, very difficult to overcome sometimes.
So with 5 minutes remaining, here's how things stand in the top three of each category. In Pro, James Bume has a comfortable 16.9 second lead over these two drivers, Alex Davidson and Ross McFarlane, second and third place, who have got a 2 second lead over Dennis Grabowski. In your Pro-Am, well done to Adam Watson in the top 10. He's still running around in 10th place in his Porsche for Altitude Esports. His next rival in Pro-Am is Paul Webster in 12th place, who's just ahead of Ben Palmer in 13th, third in class. In your AM category, it is still Dan Blackwell in 18th place overall after starting in 15th. Doing a good job is the AM of Dan. And then the next best AM is Jesse Payne Wilkins down in 24th place. So a big chunk of points being gained by Dan over the championship leader, Jesse Payne Wilkins. And then Cobolini is the final one. Andrea Cobolini, the final step of the podium in AM. That should be a good points haul for Andrea. But under 4 minutes remaining here. We won't get the checkered flag being shown a lap or two early, unlike another event that happened this weekend. 47 degrees now is the track temperature. We are officially 15 degrees hotter on the track than when we started.
Ridiculous increase in temperature, and anyone that knows iRacing knows that it feels a little bit exaggerated as well in the sim, or at least it used to. I've heard it's a lot better these days than it was. You can see the circuit now has this black streak around it where the racing line is, as the track has rubbered up more and more as the morning race has progressed. And it's great to see that they are using the real dates now of the events, just for that added realism and immersion for the drivers. But it's beautiful flying formation at the moment for WSR Esports. Davidson ahead of McFarlane, and then Grabowski not too far behind still filling a little bit of a gap in the rearview mirrors, but not enough to threaten for any sort of slipstreaming in these final moments of the race. James Bume now has a 16.4 second lead He really is in another country at the moment, isn't he? He's almost in Chile, as I saw somebody say earlier on in the YouTube comments. But it's been a great drive from him. And again, Paul, raises that if question, doesn't it, of what would have happened if Anderuti and Cedric were up there with him still.
I will tell you that there are 6 drivers currently driving around in what is known in footballing terms as squeaky bum time. They are on 20 instant points, 6 drivers right now. So there's a number of drivers who are just desperately trying to wheel their cars to the end of the race without picking up a drive-through penalty. And the worst time to get a drive-through penalty, on the very last lap of the race. And we saw that last time out. So definitely there'll be 6 drivers worried right now and driving within themselves a bit. But we've got 2.5 laps remaining potentially in this race. And Bume now 17.5 seconds clear. This has been an imperious drive for a driver who started this race in 3rd place and just sat behind Cedric and Anderuti.
Just shows you that to take a race victory, it doesn't always have to be the most flamboyant and exciting of drives. He's just been so calculated, like he has been in his previous seasons. There's a reason that he's reigning champion, in the right place at the right time, and this has been a real stamp of authority on why he is a reigning champion as well. He didn't just benefit from the incident earlier on and get it handed to him on a complete silver platter. He still had to work hard to keep that gap, and he's just continued to make it even bigger. He's just taken the opportunity, he's taken everybody else's morale and just absolutely destroyed it and said, look, I'm just going to keep driving away. It's been epic stuff from James Bume. Like I said, it's not the most exciting drive in the world, but you've really got to respect what he's done with this car around here tonight.
Juho Huttunen in the 999 has picked up a drive-through penalty.
Oh, no.
And will want to get that served as soon as possible at the start of the final lap, preferably. You do not want to let it go over to the end of the race. But there is Bume then, start of his final lap. The 2 World Sim Racing eSports butt kicker drivers, they will now, they've got a ton of traffic in front of them actually. To be honest, they do let them fight in this team, but I think they'll be thinking bigger picture, we've got a 2nd and a 3rd here.
Yeah, definitely. For the team's championship in particular as well, it's massive points. Obviously, it's a great result for both drivers as individuals. I don't think there'll be any swapping around or anything like that. They're just going to remain in that formation until the very end here. But for the team, it's going to be a fantastic result. It's going to go well as well in the Altitude Esports camp with Bume, Grabowski and Slijepcevic all in the top 6. Meyer has been another driver that's been right under the radar today, but he's had a great run of it, to be fair to him. He's in a top 5 place, and Watson has held on well at the front of the AM classes. Probably a lot of, as there usually is with grids this big, Paul, underappreciated drives today that have just not been at the forefront of our attention.
Yep, certainly, but we will set our sights on the race leader because, yes, he's coming up to some lap traffic, but it doesn't matter because he is going to see the checkered flag. It's race win for James Bume, first of the season for round number 3 of the World Sim Racing GT Championship. Fantastic stuff from James for Altitude Esports, delighted with that win, and then we've got to wait for quite a while for 2nd and 3rd place. There's Adam Watson, by the way, very briefly, who is in 1st place in Pro-Am, and Dan Blackwell has got pretty much an entire lap to do before he gets to the checkered flag. There's 2nd and 3rd, and Dennis Grabowski got quite close in the end, it must be said, and there's Meyer. Congratulations to him, but Adam Watson, again, he's done a job in that Porsche, and you look at the gap. Okay, he's got Jack Cedric behind him, about 15 seconds back, but Webster and Palmer were nowhere near this man, Pro-Am winner, Adam Watson.
Fantastic drive that by Adam. Really, really solid stuff. Did everything at the right time, and we've both commentated on Adam for a while, seen him in incidents here and there, and he got a bit of a reputation for himself, but he put that to bed today. Really clean drive.
And well, this is your leading AM driver, Dan Blackwell. He's actually one of the last few cars out there on track right now, so I think he'll actually be classified as an entire lap ahead of his next competitor by the virtue of completing one more lap than them, but across the line he comes to finish this race and win for Dan Blackwell for 3M UK. Those are going to be the last drivers across the line. We did, in the end, reach 48 degrees Celsius on track, so incredible change in conditions for the drivers to be able to compete out there. But with that, we will then be able to take you through your provisional race results here for this round number 3 of the World GT Championship from World Sim Racing here on RaceSpotTV. Well, it was a tremendous race from your race winner, James Bume for Altitude Esports in his Ferrari. He wins this one by 18.8 seconds over the WSR Esports butt kicker teammates of Alex Davidson and Ross McFarlane, who finish off the podium. Dennis Grabowski tried his best to catch up, but didn't quite get there in the end, in 4th ahead of Anders Meyer, who had a very good 5th place here in this race. Axel Sjokovic did not quite do the job with the strategy, ends up in 6th ahead of Daniel Sedgley. Ethan Critchley and Arthur Thurtle in the Altitude Esports blue car, and his teammate Adam Watson 10th placed top Pro-Am driver for the Altitude Esports blue team. Jack Sedgwick then in 11th ahead of the 2nd placed Pro-Am driver, Full Tilt V Motorsport driver of Paul Webster in his Audi. Behind him was Ben Palmer, but only just at the line actually. It was pretty close, as you can see on the timing there. A couple of tenths between him and Ben Palmer in that WSR Esports outfit, finishing 3rd in Pro-Am. Matt Loveridge ahead of Raphael Schiffer, who of course had an incident early on in the race and had to recover in this one. Michael Evdoka as well, another driver who had struggles out there. Andy Archer finished ahead of the 3M UK drivers, Dan Blackwell, who takes the AM win, Joe Newman, who is in 19th. Michael Gray, 20th place in today's race. 21st for Mattia Catania, with Thomas Cavalier in 22nd. Ben Gregory 23rd ahead of the 2nd placed AM driver of Jesse Payne Wilkins, the Full Tilt V SimSport driver. Jamie Rushworth had issues out there. James Ibram in the Effect Simulations car having issues as well as Till Sommerfeld. Andrea Corbellini, the ADX racing team, finishes 28th overall, 3rd placed in AM ahead of Ben Cullen and Simon Andre Livingston. Then it's Mark Hutchinson ahead of Jack Osborne, Byron Crawford, Johnny Elia, Craig Jones, Jeremy Bonsandur with Giuseppe Moschella, Johnny Walker and Juho Huttunen, who all finished 1 lap down. Kevin Stringer 2 laps down in the end. Has still more results to come here on the screen. 41st then for Stephen Koenig, who finished a number of laps down here, as our graphics seem to have stopped, so I'll carry on. Dwayne Hoffman then in 42nd ahead of Simon Lersing in 43rd. Bart Fauerstein 44th ahead. Of course, these drivers retired from Bart Fauerstein, Brian Balterson, Nathan Healy, Leandro Andaruti, which was the big dramatic one out there, not finishing the race after leading 30 laps of this one. Colin Campbell, Phil Samways, Alan Mystic, Chris Gooch and Adam Tompkins all did not finish this race. As finally the button works, and we'll show you the rest of them. I mean, Chaz, what a race to come back to, and high drama, if nothing else.
Yeah, definitely. It was a race that had a bit of everything. You know, there was the very stable introduction to the race where drivers got into a rhythm, they sat behind one another, started fuel saving and establishing themselves and where they were in the race. And then, of course, the middle part of it just exploded. You know, big incidents really threw up a lot of changes for the race leaders, and then we saw the strategies come into play in the final moments, and drivers were at different pace levels and obviously trying to shorten their pit stops by as much as they could. It was a really, really solid race, that. A great advert for endurance racing and, of course, the World GT Championship.
Well, I would like to speak to race winner James Bume, but he doesn't seem to be there at the moment. So what we will do is speak to our Pro-Am winner right now. Chaz Draycott, take it away with Pro-Am winner Adam Watson.
Mr. Watson, welcome to the booth, my friend. You must be over the moon with that one, because with the rising temperatures and obviously the length of that race in general, it didn't look like an easy run tonight.
Yeah, it was a pretty good race, and I was able to stick with like the BMWs in front and what I needed to do. But the Porsche was really good and kept the tyres quite well.
I was going to say, were the tyres an issue towards the end of the race because of the temperatures rising so quickly? I think we figured out that it had gone up by about 15 or 16 degrees by the time that race had finished.
No, the tyres weren't really an issue. It just started to slide about a bit, but it was manageable for the car, and I was able to do what needed to happen.
Well, it certainly seemed like it worked out for you, mate. Were there any moments of the race that particularly had you worried, or was it all under control all the way through?
Before the race actually started, there was quite a few people who had really good pace, like Jonathan Walker, who had like 4/10 on most of Pro-Ams in practice, so going into qualifying, that was a bit of a worry. But then I knew Ben was quick, but I think the jumbo pack at the start and just able to stay with the BMW in front was just what happened, because I'm like 4 or 5k slow in a straight line.
Of course, next time round you go to Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal, Canada. It's a fantastic circuit in my eyes, but it's a big challenge in big, beefy GT3 cars, isn't it?
It's just how we'll get through it. I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be close quarters racing, but I think the last few races have showed that it'll be a pretty good race.
Well, we wish you all the best for that one, Adam. Thank you very much for joining us. Well done tonight, and we'll see you again very soon.
Thank you, everyone.
There we go then. Adam Watson, the Pro-Am winner, and we move straight on now to our overall race winner who jumps in the box with us. James Bumy, welcome to the box, my friend. What a drive from you. I mean, I said on the broadcast there was no fireworks or anything sort of over the top or flamboyant about it. You just calculated it all the way to the end. How was it from your perspective?
I think, I think for the first stint, it was like really hotting up between myself, Anderuti, and Sedgwick. And I was sort of thinking like, oh, it's just going to be like a really good race. But it looks like Anderuti got really unlucky with the wheel disconnect. And after that, it was just, I knew I had the pace in it to take it all the way. And just sort of controlled the race, really. Just sort of controlled my tyres, controlled my pace, really. I was taking it easy with the traffic as well. I mean, the Ferrari's got lots of pace around here compared to the Lambos, which is part of the reason why we chose it for this championship as well. So it looks like it's paid off today.
Absolutely, you can say that again. I was going to ask actually about the tyres and the temperatures. I asked Adam, and he said it was quite easy to control. It's just something you've got to keep your eye on. Is the Ferrari a car that likes to chew its tyres, or is it quite a good little machine for that?
It's pretty good usually. There is a little bit of a traction issue associated with the Ferrari, which will sort of haunt it at other tracks, but it seems pretty good on its tyres. But I think the thing was that because of the rising temperatures, I had to sort of change the strategy a little bit. So the idea was we didn't want to be on used tyres when it got hot. So we actually did a short stop first and wait until the temperatures rised up, and then we went into the last pit stops and changed tyres, and it looks like it paid off massively as well. So, yeah.
I was going to say, definitely big points for the championship, and importantly, scoring them early on as well. You mentioned other circuits. We go to Gilles Villeneuve next time round. Are you excited about that one, or is it a circuit you don't quite enjoy as much?
We'll have to see, I think. We'll have to see. I personally really like it. I think the Ferrari has some strengths and weaknesses around that track, so I haven't done my testing yet, but I'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think I wanted to say massive praise to Davidson and Ross today as well. They sort of maximised their opportunities as well today. Obviously, the Lamborghini not being a strong round here, but they definitely maximised it this round with a P2 and P3. So they're definitely going to be championship contenders with me, and potentially Anderuti and Sedgwick as well. So it could be a very exciting year.
We certainly hope so. It's certainly shaping up to be one, James, and obviously that's a fantastic way to really stamp your authority on the championship after winning it last time round. But well done from us here at RaceSpotTV, and we look forward to seeing you again next time round.
Thank you very much. And if you don't mind, I'd just quickly like to thank all of our sponsors, 3M, SimStickers, Grumpy Dad, and Mr. Hedge Photography. And just a massive thanks to Altitude Esports as well for the race setup today.
Not a problem at all, James. Thanks very much for joining us, mate. We'll see you next time round.
Yeah, see you next time. Take care.
Lovely stuff. Lovely stuff from James. And again, like I said, Paul, just such a controlled victory from him. You know, no flamboyance. He just absolutely nailed it today.
I could tell you that he's actually closed up the championship points, but up to just 4 points separating him and Ross McFarlane after this round. This is prior to any penalties that are applied. Adam Watson is 36 points in the lead of Pro-Am over Ben Palmer. Jesse Payne-Wilkins has a 13-point lead over Dan Blackwell. A further 2 points clear of Andrea Corbellini. So it's early stages in terms of championship. Speaking of the championship, you mentioned it. Next week, next time out, we'll head to Circuit Gilles Villeneuve for 245 feature races. It's a different track, but it's another high-speed track, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one that's very often sort of misunderstood, actually. It really is a high-speed place, but because it's quite close quarters nature, as James said himself, you expect it to be a slow circuit. But yeah, I think in GT3 cars, it's an absolute joy, and we've had some fantastic battles and races there before. Again, you've just got to be careful of those pinch points and accidents on the opening lap and then make it through.
Well, thank you very much, Chaz, for stepping into the shoes of Peter Mackay. It's been a pleasure to have you back.
Been a pleasure.
In the commentary box here in the World Sim Racing. Thank you very much to Conor Maddock as well, our producer. Dougie Beard, the track cams by him, ATV from Appgeneering with our products for our overlay graphics. I've been Paul Smith. We'll see you next week, same time, same place, for the World GT Championship here on RaceSpotTV. Goodbye.